Saintess summons skeletons, a holy necromancy lit RPG. By Morn. Chapter 191, Shifting. Sofia ordered the scouts to take some distance and only engage in battle if they were followed. Whatever they had found didn't pursue them. From that bit of information alone, Sofia could guess that the enemy either hadn't detected the skeletons or didn't go out of its way to attack. So it was probably safe enough to approach. For extra precautions, she had Perith go to the front guard a bit further so she could see the enemy through him a bit earlier than if she had to go herself. After 2 turns through the maze, she caught sight of the 3 scouts and the opening a bit further. It looked like the tight corridors of the maze opened up in a larger room. Is this going to make me wish I'd committed to letting Perith stay in the Alpha? Sofia could see something moving in there, but despite her good vision and being able to see in the dark, she couldn't make much sense of it. It looked like something massive and writhing. As she walked closer and closer, a putrid stench assaulted her nose. It was awfully similar to the smell produced by the ritual Zire had taught her to get clean skeletons. These characteristics together reminded her of something she had read. The closer she got, the more confident she was in her first hypothesis. This was a monster she had read about in Alitha's Slimes illustrated book that she had gotten from the Gachapon boxes after her first trial. The book was very thorough in describing the habits, strengths, and weaknesses of the many types of slimes. Some were quite cute, some fascinating, some intimidating, and some straight up disgusting. What Sofia was looking at right now was, in her opinion, the flagship of that last category. Necrotic ooze. Oozes, in general, were already the messy subcategory of slimes. For regular slimes, their survival relied on the integrity of their outer layer. That was why they simply died after a few pointy stick pokes back at the church when Sofia had to get her first level UPS. For oozes, they had no outer layer. Their gooey insides were allowed to freely roam and squirm around as long as they were connected to their solid core. Killing an ooze, in theory, was very straightforward, one only had to break or remove the core. The smell was too strong, Sofia had stopped breathing and pinched her nose, but it still got to her somehow. She had to take some steps back. From afar, she observed the monster. The corridor was about 3 meters tall and wide, and the ooze, which seemed to be in a larger room, looked like it was much larger than that. It was exactly as the book had depicted it, a disgusting mound of writhing rotting flesh. It was both rotting and regenerating at an accelerated pace, like a flower of death, perpetually blooming and wilting. As if that spectacle wasn't enough, it was secreting splashes and squirts of blood and pus that Sofia knew from the book were very corrosive. It's also pretty much immune to the attrition tactics recommended against the other oozes, and it has multiple fake cores. And that's not mentioning the necrosis aura. I'm not going against that right now. There was a very real possibility she could one-hit kill it with a charged enough bolt, but if that failed, she didn't want to have that behemoth of rot and death pursuing her through the unexplored corridors. This was a maze, after all, and there could be a way to get to the other side of that room the ooze was in by walking around. Unless she was out of options, Sofia had no reason to fight the thing, so she turned around and left. Sofia sat in the middle of a 4-way intersection. Behind her was the path to the starting cell, in front was the ooze's path. She sent the scouts to the right. They got quite far, took a few turns, and eventually, all died. There was no warning sign. They hadn't been moving irregularly and hadn't tried to flee. 1 second, they were advancing, and the next, they were gone. All right then. Reusing the flat bone plate she had used to map the maze during the first phase, Sofia started making a map of this new one. She could already mark 2 paths as very unsafe. Next, she selected 3 paladins out of her protective circle and designated them to be the next scouting team. She sent them straight into the left corridor. They advanced and disappeared behind a corner. Sofia kept track of their position. She didn't want to miss anything if they suddenly disappeared as well. This group did not go as far from Sofia as the previous one. It reported an enemy's presence. From the 3 paladin skeletons' subsequent movements, Sofia understood they were engaged in a fight. It did not last long. One after the other, in quick succession, the 3 skeletons died. What kills them in a single hit can likely do the same to me. Not left either, then. I suppose it's time to explore the other way from the cell. Sofia could have gone to check out what precisely the dangers in the left and right paths were, but that felt much too risky to do without having at least 1 false immortality rune as a safety net. And she didn't want to use it before her mana was fully back up, which was currently still only at 42 out of 94,000. With only 19 paladins left, Sofia stood up and started walking back to the location of the starting cell. She noticed no new path on the way, but something caught her eye among the debris that had escaped her when she first walked through that corridor, a worn-out book. Sofia grabbed the old leather-bound book. In line with everything else in the maze, it was in an advanced state of decomposition. The pages inside were brown and crumbly. Any ink that might have been on it had long disappeared, and Identify refused to work on anything that came from the maze. The only information Sofia got from the book was the title on the leather cover. Interestingly, it seemed to be written in ancient human, not in the common language. It was close enough that Sofia could still read it. The common language was supposedly strongly based on ancient human. In that case, the letters looked weird, and some seemed to be misplaced, but Sofia was confident in her interpretation of it, the Great Hollow. On the back of the cover, kind of like Sipture's necromancy grimoire had Sorrow's ritual, there was a half-erased ritual circle. Could that be related to another recessed? Or even sorrow? After all, the ritual I performed was called the Sabbath of the Hollow Heart, so there could be a link. That half of a ritual circle doesn't look anything like Sorrow's ritual, though. Or should I say, like Sorrow's divine rune? Because that's probably what it really was, now that I think about it. I would keep this, but it's sure to be a monoconstruct like everything else. I'll copy the half-erased ritual on a bone slate, just in case. I'm sure Zire would be interested in studying it. Even though it would probably end up disappearing when she left the trial, she still shoved the book in her ring and started walking toward the starting cell again. It was taking a while to get there. Was this corridor always that long? The cells should be right around there, no? Sofia looked as far as she could, but it did not seem like there was anything like a cell door in the walls of this corridor. Did I take a wrong turn? Or are the walls actually moving again? It's weird, though, even if the walls move. The layout seemed to be generally the same, except the cells have disappeared. To ensure she hadn't taken a wrong turn, Sofia decided to return to the four-way intersection and try again. It was then that she noticed something very wrong. She had been paying more attention to the debris around her ever since she found the book. It had all changed. No wonder she had missed the book on her first go, it likely wasn't there. She kept going, sending yet another group of 3 paladins ahead as scouts, and did reach the intersection. It was exactly where she remembered it was, but there, again, it did not look the same. She had spent enough time sitting there that she knew very well how the broken crates and barrels were arranged in there. It had all changed. There had also been a big patch of mushrooms and strange grass there that she had spent a while observing before. It was nowhere to be seen. So I followed the same route and ended up at a different place. Chapter 192, Laborious Reading. Sofia pushed forward to see if she could find the necrotic ooze. As expected, it wasn't there. There seemed to be a large room at the same emplacement, but it was behind a closed set of stone doors. This. How do I even make a map? The general layout doesn't change, but everything else does? Are there several different versions of the same rooms and corridors that are exchanging places with one another when I'm not looking? Or am I the one being teleported to another similar but different maze every so often without realizing it? Ugh. I liked the moving walls better. With things being that weird, Sofia gave up trying to rush things so much and patiently let the last bits of her mana refill before summoning her birds and putting on a rune. She also started to annotate the places on her map. For the room in front of her, she marked 1 necrotic ooze, 2 closed doors, 3. Depending on how this works, I could use this to my advantage to avoid unpleasant stuff like the ooze by crossing the room in one of its less putrid versions, if that's a thing. I've yet to understand what prompts the change, though, and how far it extends. After the 10 minutes of channeling required to activate false immortality, which felt like they lasted forever, Sofia summoned the graveyard crew to phase Perith through the door. I feel safer now. Let's see what we have got in there this time. As Sofia guessed, the ghostly skeletons couldn't get through the walls and floor, but they could still phase through the door. They slowly carried Perith through, and Sofia got to see the inside of the room. This was some kind of large living quarters, with tables, a fireplace, a kitchen counter along a wall, and shelves scattered here and there. Like everything else in the maze, it all was old and decrepit, a thick layer of roots entering from who knows where had even grown all over the floor. It was very militaristic, not only due to the blazons decorating the walls but also the many weapons and shields lined up on racks everywhere. That and the 12 armored knights. As if stuck in an eerie painting, 12 fully armored knights with closed helmets were frozen in place doing everyday things. One of them, for example, was sitting at a table, in position to polish his rusted, broken-in-half sword with an invisible rag he was holding. Another was getting ready to eat out of an empty bowl with his wooden spoon. Some were relaxing on chairs, sitting around a table, and some were leaning against the walls. Did they die and get stuck in place for eternity? Some kind of petrification curse? Wait. Sofia was about to tell Perith to channel his sanctified grounds as soon as possible, but it was obvious he already was from the instant he was getting ready to enter the room as it instantly activated. The reason for Perith to be ready to fight was a simple detail that Sofia had discarded at the beginning. As she looked around, the roots on the ground seemed connected to the knight's armor. She asked Perith to stab the roots he was walking on to make sure of her assumptions. His sword of light cut through a thick root. Thick, bright red resin splashed out. In a terrifying cacophony of otherworldly screeching and grating metal, the armors moved, turning their head toward Perith in unison. The fake tree monsters from the spirit forest. Is this maze another secret buried beneath the forest? That could be why I can't get through the walls if it's not just a limitation of the trial. Sofia observed from the safety of her spot while Perith rushed toward the armored wood monsters. There was no reason for her to take any risks, which conveniently gave Perith a perfect way to escape should he need to by teleporting to her. The armored trees gave Perith a good challenge, not so much because they hurt him. In fact, throughout the whole fight, Perith lost no health, but because they were so many. The root monster's strategy was to dogpile on Perith and punch him, piercing him with wooden tendrils. Even without his armor, this wouldn't do much to Perith, who had not much to be pierced through, but it did limit his movements. The monsters were very resilient. Perith struggled as they latched onto him. His usual weapons were useless in the messy melee. He grabbed them and tore them apart one by one, ripping off the parts of steel armor and the writhing wood beneath as they did their best to dig their roots around and inside him, latching onto his bones as if he was soil to be planted into, nutrients to be consumed. Bones might make for good fertilizer, but this soil fought back. After a few minutes of struggling, only Perith was left standing in an ocean of red sap, splintered steel, and broken roots. Of course, there is nothing in the kill log. These things are a bit scary, but they're not very bright. Also, these ones were nowhere near as fast as the one that tried running away from the giant blind boar, lower level, perhaps? Now is it safe to walk into this room? Sofia had Perith open the door from the inside after she took some steps back. The red sap essentially covered the whole floor of that room now, and some of it overflowed into the corridor. Sofia walked up to the red puddle. Terrible that I cannot identify anything. The red sap was very rich in mana, but she could feel that it was quickly losing it and drying up. I wonder if that counts as sap or as blood. Still wearing her armor, she touched the liquid. It was not as sticky as she expected. I guess it's more like blood. The color is so bright, though, that it would probably make some great dye. Doesn't smell like much of anything, either. Since it didn't seem like the liquid was corrosive or dangerous, Sofia stepped into the room, paladin skeletons in tow. There wasn't much to be found there. The curtain-like cloth blazons on the wall were all in terrible shape, but since they were all the same, by piecing together the different pieces, Sofia managed to recreate a depiction of the whole thing on her bone slate near the map. It was a coat of arms representing 2 horse-riding knights protecting a giant tree with a divine halo made of a bunch of swords. I have never seen anything like that before. The tree kind of looks like a black primus, but not quite. One more thing to look up later, again, maybe Zire will know more, or Velour. Ah, but we can't speak about the trial. Well, maybe if I don't say anything about where this comes from. Annoying. I'll see when I get there, I suppose. The only other thing of any interest in the room was the book on which one of the knights had been hunched over before they all took life to throw themselves at Perith. Unlike the other book she had found, some text survived. Due to the unclean handwriting inside and the lack of a title on the leather cover, she guessed it was some kind of journal. She read the passages that she found. It was a real pain to make sense of because they were all in ancient human and very faded. That and the worse than usual calligraphic skills of the author. Arlige again in his sleep. There, no stop, uncovered artifact. Many lines are missing, even on the better conserved pages. Deeper, thousands of workers all for, care despite. And that's it for this page. The mention of an uncovered artifact is intriguing, but that doesn't say much without context. Maybe the goal of the trial is to find the artifact? There are 2 more with readable words, so let's hope they hold more information on this place. It was around the middle, I think. There. Extending to no E. Since the sculptor Recrea, madness. That's all there was? I might have been a bit too optimistic. Last usable page then, near the end. Hey, that's at least 3 readable lines, kind of. Only the ever-faithful and the desperate are still in ab, of our liege. And these doors are the last bastion of our sanity. We guard them day and night. Only nightmares await on the other side. We can no longer leave even if, no signs for weeks, probably dead, or worse, pagan rituals from the Chwees, consumed by the encroaching, too late. I do not know what I expected, but not that. Very reassuring. Chapter 193, So many issues but no exit. Sofia stored the book by habit and kept looking around. One thing is clear from that, it looks like this was a nightmarish place even before the system copied it to make it a part of the spire. If it isn't all made up, at least. Going by everything so far, I would say that this probably exists in the real world too, and it's likely in or under the spirit forest. This place may be from a time much older than Ziray even. When it said consumed by the encroaching, I wonder if that's referring to the living trees or something else. And they were guarding these doors, I guess? Well, I came from there. There was a single other door in the room, a regular one, wooden and half broken. It seemed to lead to a small and tight corridor. Perith doesn't fit in there. She wasn't about to not explore it, so she sent paladins ahead to make sure it was safe, stored Perith, and eventually entered the corridor herself. It felt less like a part of the maze and more like a service corridor in a castle. Several doors were on each side. Bedrooms for the knights, some armor and swords are left over inside. 2 beds per room, 10 rooms on each side. So there were only 12 knights left out of a potential 40? The question is, did they leave, or did they leave? Either way, the ones who stayed had a bad ending. Sofia did not stay in the bedroom section for too long. The corridor ended in a full turn to the right, and after the scouts ensured it was safe, she advanced too. After the turn, the corridor abruptly became as large as they usually were everywhere else in the maze. That surprised Sofia, but what surprised her more was her tracking of the paladin's position. The 2 scouts and 3 more that had been walking ahead of her were still there in her sight. The others she felt were now what felt like several kilometers above her. And as fast as she got that weird signal, it disappeared. Sofia turned around. The small corridor was nowhere to be seen. It was just another 3 by 3 meters maze corridor, at the end of which she saw a large and seemingly empty room where the room full of wooden knights had been. It looks like I caught one of the maze changes. Was I teleported down is what it is? So I need to be wary of corners? Or was there another trigger that I missed? The weird part is that the skeletons ahead are still with me, but the ones behind vanished. But I'm certain I felt their position way up above, so... Is this place like a big layered thing? And the layers melt into each other? This is the sandwich theory all over again. So far, the general layout doesn't change, at least, so that makes mapping easy. On her map, near that one room, she updated the descriptions. 1 necrotic ooze. 2 wood knights. 3 empty room. 4? How many layers are there? Sofia couldn't help but speculate on ways to navigate such a place. As she had guessed earlier when trying to avoid the ooze, if she could figure out the exact rules of switching layers, it had the potential to make her exploration of the place incredibly easy. Now that I think about it, I meant to summon the birds after putting up the immortality rune, but I got distracted by the closed room. There was no apparent reason to keep the exploration so slow, and having a bunch of birds flying around might just help her understand how the layering worked. She sent half the birds ahead into the unknown and half of them back from where she came through the large empty room. Taking out a homemade bone chair from her storage ring, Sofia sat down right where she was and mapped out the surroundings according to the birds' movements. So far, it seemed the corridor she was in split into a few ways, which were all dead ends of some kind. All was fine until the whole group of birds she sent back was just gone. Again? One of the groups of paladin scouts also disappeared that way. Just what? The birds from the other side all came back, and Sofia sent 5 of them to where half of the flock had just disappeared. They had orders to fly in a single file with 10 meters of distance between each other. Sofia knew the safest way to check was to send Perith to observe them directly, but she did not want to risk seeing him disappear. Soon, the first bird in the line disappeared, then when it crossed the same point, the second one did as well. Sofia gave them the order to stop, and nothing else happened afterward. She wanted to check the dead ends in front. Those were probably 3 more rooms to explore, but understanding how the maze worked as a whole took precedence. With her skeletal escort of a stone ogre, a few paladins, and about 20 birds, she walked to the spot where the birds vanished. It was an inconspicuous spot in the maze, right before the 4-way intersection she had already crossed there. Restocking the line of birds, she sent them ahead, ready to watch them disappear. Except they didn't. Is it all random? Sofia made another bird line to try out something and sent these 2 out. The first one was set out to follow the path in the starting cell direction, while the second would go back to where Sofia came from. At about the same time, when the backtracking birds were a bit further than the corner where half her paladins vanished, the birds on both sides started disappearing. This time only one from each disappeared since they had orders to stop if such a thing happened again. I think I get it. Sofia's theory was that the skeletons disappeared not because they crossed a certain point specific to the maze but because they were too far from her. With the birds on both sides waiting still, she took a few steps toward the starting cell. As she expected, another bird from the other side vanished as she walked further from it. That's all it was this whole time. Sure took me a while to figure it out. Then when I felt the paladin skeletons be way up. They were also too far away, so they vanished. Someone without golems or undead would never find that out. Now the question is, why do they disappear when far away, and how do I use this to my advantage? Now that she understood the process of disappearing skeletons better, she felt safer to send Perith to the edge of the range to observe the birds as they vanished. Once he was there, the birds started flying away again, and to Sofia's surprise, nothing happened to them. After some more testing, she discovered that not only herself but also Perith served as some kind of anchor that the mist skeletons couldn't get too far from. Perith was far out of her brown anchoring range with a group of birds when she concluded her final test to have Perith teleport to her from there. He appeared at her side, and the birds left behind all instantly disappeared. The skeleton paladins disappeared simultaneously, stunning Sofia, who looked around and panicked until she realized they had just timed out. More than 3 hours since I summoned them against the master already. I'm still monologued from the rune, and the book's running low on fog. Guess it's just me, Perith, and the remaining 8 birds. Feeling like she couldn't learn more from her current spot, Sofia started manually exploring again. She picked a random direction since they were all unexplored in the current layer anyway. A few turns later, the birds tasked with spotting the corners warned her of the presence of an enemy. You handle that. I need to preserve my mana. Perith's halo, armor, and weapon all flared up at once, and once the sanctified grounds activated, he engaged the enemy. What Perith was faced with was a tall and gaunt zombie with long semicircle claws. It looked kind of dry and didn't smell much for a walking corpse anyway. If Sofia had to guess, it did not look especially powerful despite being as tall as the current Perith. When Perith's sword failed to cut the undead's neck, she recognized that there might be an issue. When it struck back faster than Perith could react, cut straight through his armor, and sliced his left arm clean into 6 pieces, the issue had suddenly grown out of hand. Chapter 194, Secret Technique. In the face of an enemy much too strong to handle without a plan, Sofia did the best thing that she could come up with: flee. She ran back and let Perith slow the thing down. It would be lucky if he managed to save himself by teleporting to her. Going by the speed of the monster, there wouldn't be much left of his skeleton by the time she was far enough. She was soon comforted in her choice to flee when, through Perith's eyes as he struggled to hold out for as long as possible by parrying and dodging, another of the tall zombies appeared from a corner a bit further away. There's 2 of them. Sofia kept running. It was best to get as much distance as she could from these things. Perith succumbed, which was no surprise, and when she had made it back to the large room, she found out that it was currently the Necroticus lair. Necroticus and zombies supposedly on the same layer? I'm sensing some kind of a pattern here. Are the layers themed? Guess I'll know for sure if I find more wood monsters on the closed room layer. Though it's kind of hard to tell when it's changing. I think it's only when I turn around or go past corners because I've never seen the change directly. But I don't know what triggers it exactly. It feels random so far. Sofia found a cleanish place in the maze to resummon Perith in one of the spare stone ogre. Luckily, thanks to Ziray's rampage, she had a few spares, but it was still annoying to lose one. Perith himself didn't seem too bothered by dying as long as she was safe. These zombies must be what killed my paladin scouts last time. I was on the ooze layer 2 back then. This time Sofia decided to go in the opposite direction from the zombies, and once again, she found monsters. These were also undead, which she thought confirmed her earlier theory, but they were much less scary. Ghosts. If Sofia had to say what kind of undead she knew the best, it was obviously skeletons. But if she had to give the second one, it would be ghosts. She had been with Alith enough to know all she needed to know, so she stored her skeletons and just walked in. With the rune masking her mana emissions, she was as good as invisible to the ethereal beings, no matter how many hundreds of them roamed this part of the maze. There were two types of ghosts that she saw, laborers and knights. They were all drifting around aimlessly, and like Sofia's graveyard skeletons, they couldn't actually pass through the walls here. She was still not out of the ghost riddles corridors when, after turning to the right at an intersection, the decor changed. The path ahead was laden with rusty steel spikes protruding from every direction. She turned around. The previous ghost crowds were nowhere to be seen. Instead, there were traps. Floor covered in dubious liquids, holes in the walls, spikes everywhere. She thought she could also see some thin wires stretched through the path. Lovely. I liked the ghosts better. So, this is some kind of trap-themed lair? I know some nobles like to have a few of them in their residences as protection, so it's not uncommon to find a few when you explore an old ruin worth looting. Or so the guild said. But come on. There isn't even a safe place to step anywhere except where I am right now. This is ridiculous. All things considered, Sofia was pretty sturdy with both her armor. As a result, most of the traps failed to do anything to her, but some still packed a punch, or were simply annoying to deal with. The thin wires, for example, they were quite hard to see, so Sofia touched them multiple times by accident. Whenever that happened, it triggered a bunch of the dumbest, most over-the-top traps Sofia could even imagine. Her favorite trap was the big boulder. A few times, a boulder almost as large as the corridor would drop from the ceiling, crushing everything in its path. By going prone in the corner of the corridor, the boulder would harmlessly roll along, but it activated many traps along the way, clearing the path for Sofia to advance. The rest of the time that duty was mostly left to Perith, who couldn't care less that he got splashed by corrosive acid or fired a volley of armor-piercing arrows at it. It was a bit laborious, but Sofia kept mapping out this portion of the maze, hoping for it to change soon. At least, this layer was so far free of anything of real danger. After another crossed corner, the layer changed again. This time, nothing, just empty corridors. As far as she could tell, there wasn't even any of the usual debris and mess. Finally. So. Undead layer, wood layer, trap layer, empty layer. I would like it if there wasn't a fifth and so on, but who am I kidding? Sofia and Perith ran through the empty maze. It was well and truly empty. They could not find a single trace of anything, and that made mapping very easy, so they tried going as fast as possible. There were a few places with unusual architecture Sofia took note of that could host some interesting things in the other layers. For now they were all empty. She kept going as fast as possible until she had a comprehensive map of what she thought was most of the maze. It was actually smaller than the one with the stone drake, even if not by much. She did not find an exit, but as she turned to explore one of the last paths, she saw something unusual. There was something in a room, far at the other end of the long path. Sofia turned around to check the layer. Still the empty layer. But it's not empty there? She cautiously advanced. Perith was the one to open the march like always. As she drew closer she could make more details. It was an ugly statue. A sculpture of a hideous being with large fangs and uneven limbs. She prayed that it wasn't some kind of gargoyle. As she and Perith approached, nothing happened. The statue just stood there, looking straight ahead. Close to its chest, it was holding a perfectly smooth black orb. Not again. Sofia was ready to bet this orb was crucial to solve the maze. Because of course it would. It felt a bit too familiar for comfort. It's not going to fly away when I try to grab it, right? She had Perith grab the orb. He touched it and nothing happened. Then he took it out of the sculpture's hand. The statue opened its three lifelike eyes. Their iris were deep blue and strangely fascinating to look at. In fact, Sofia couldn't resist looking at them even if she tried. Some kind of primal instinct forced her to look at them, to stare. The maze around her changed. Everything was bathed in a hypnotizing blue-purple shifting hue, the same as the statue's eyes. It felt kind of like a dream. Until Sofia looked around. Actually, like a nightmare. On the ceiling, on the walls, on the floor, hundreds, no, thousands of eyes, everywhere, staring at her. Her first reflex was to step on one. It moved along the floor, avoiding her stomp. When Parath tried to attack, it was the same. The countless unblinking eyes only stared and avoided the hits. With no real option except to move out of that one room, she adventured herself through the eye-filled maze. Seeing as nothing happened after a few turns, this looked like nothing more than a creepier version of the empty layer. She still wasn't sure if this was a layer in itself of the empty layer having gone through a change. But at least now I have an orb. Yay! Before she knew it, Sofia was back to the large room. There was something inside. Not the empty layer, then, this is probably its own thing. But what's that? A weird blob of color squirmed in the middle of the room. Sofia couldn't find a better description. Everything was lit in weird deep blue, and that thing was nothing except just that color. If not for it blocking Sofia from seeing the eyes on the other side of the room, she might have not even noticed it being there. Sofia was still quite a distance away, and stepping back. So far, the monsters in the maze had been pretty strong. There was no need for a confrontation if she could avoid it. Taking her distance, what she was didn't please her. The thing seemed to be developing appendages all over its surface. Moss? It was only when the room's eyes converged around the thing and started to slide up onto it that Sofia stopped looking and ran. The monster was an agglomeration of a color, countless eyes, and gaping maws with sharp teeth. Sofia looked back as she ran. The thing had bloated and was shoving itself into the corridor. Her eyes and the monster's made contact. The monster screamed and the whole maze shook. Like a tidal wave, it burst forward. As a human, Sofia had never once sprinted as fast as she did this instant. Chapter 195, Back to Basics. The screams of the amalgam horror resounded through the corridor as Sofia ran for her life. She knew the general disposition of the maze's layout now, and she ran toward the most complex part of the maze. She didn't fool herself into thinking that maybe she could fight the thing. All she wanted was to try to take as many corners as possible to search for a life-saving layer change. Immediately, there was a problem. The thing was much faster than her. Sofia unsummoned her bone armor and stored the orichalcum one, anything to go faster. It was getting closer. Not enough. You have chosen to replace Poker Face, LVL36, by Sprint, LVL9. Poker Face will be unavailable for 36 months. Are you sure? Yes. Sprint, top running speed is 90%, 10 * skill level, higher. The few seconds that it took for Sofia to fiddle with the system was enough for the monster to almost catch up. She had a rune up still, but if it activated, she would instantly give up. Sofia felt her body become lighter, her legs stronger. Pushed by the mana from the skill, her speed almost doubled. She was surprised to see the skill already at level 9, considering it had been level 3 when she deleted it last time, but she gladly welcomed the upgrade. Finally, she managed to gain some distance. She was faster than the thing now, even if just a tiny bit, but her stamina was draining at breakneck speed as well. Several times, she almost spelled her doom by almost crashing into the wall during a turn because she was going so fast, but so far, she managed. The monster's screams didn't calm down, they got louder and louder, angrier as Sofia slowly pulled away. Way of the Fool was working very hard to let her not fall despite her speed and the quakes shaking through the maze every time the monster howled. Bit by bit, her speed fell as her stamina started running out. Come on, change layer Already. She was doing her best to run around, going deeper and deeper into the maze. It was hard to remember it all. In desperation, she started emptying her bone storage to see if a well-placed pile of bones would slow the thing down. It did not. The monster ate and tore through the pile of bones like it was mush. The barrel of silver water was thrown at the monster too, as well as good quantities of blood. Nothing helped. Trying hard to remember what else she had that could help, Sofia kept throwing out things from her storage behind her. The monster devoured them all the same without losing its pace. At an intersection, she turned, thinking she could loop around the monster and turn back, but was forced to go back and choose another direction. The monster was truly like a flood, it filled up the whole maze. Now it was coming from different directions all at once. At this pace, it would soon fill up the whole place, leaving Sofia with nowhere to go. She still had a bunch of liquid health potions, she threw most of them at the thing. That did nothing. She also threw the explosive candy from a lith. These exploded after the thing ate them, and it actually slowed it down. For a second or two. It started going even faster after that. Sofia ran and ran, but the distance of a dozen of meters still separating her from the flood-like monster was slowly getting smaller. As she turned a corner, what Sofia had been trying to avoid all this time happened, and she entered a dead end. Faced with an insurmountable hurdle, Sofia sighed. This is where the trial ends, then. Just as it was about to reach her, she activated her bone armor. If it was going to eat her alive, at least she would fight back with some bone-dominous spikes. Perith also came out to fight, and Sofia turned around to face the monstrosity. The awaited death didn't come. Sofia was shocked by the calm and silence that had regained the maze. No more eyes, no more nightmare fuel monster. Where Sofia was, there was only old and moldy furniture, roots on the ground, and long dead knights slowly waking up around her. Under the assault of a dozen wood monsters, Sofia laughed. This was so much better. Perith did not let the wood knights hit Sofia a single time. When she started lashing out with her spine whip, the damage from the solar bursts were devastating on the very flammable monsters. When this was all said and done, and she was safe, Sofia sat in the puddle of vibrant red sap and killed herself, triggering her rune. With her stamina back up, she now waited in place for her mana to come back. She didn't move, and she never looked behind her. A layer change at this moment would be too unfortunate. She did not want to spit at the luck she had just had. Or the misfortune. At first glance, she felt that she was lucky the layer change happened when it did. It had literally saved her life, a fraction of a second away from a disaster. But on the flip side, it had ample occasions to happen before that as she ran and took many turns through the maze, and it never did. Seriously though, what was this fucking thing? I don't know, but it takes the cake as the scariest shit I have ever seen. I think I wasn't far from a heart attack. What is going to happen if I get sent back to the eye layer? Is it full of this thing now? I really can't afford to move without a rune anymore. But I believe the change to that layer was triggered by me taking the orb, so at least going there might not happen randomly. I hope. Also that damn orb better be useful. And of course, like everything else, I cannot identify it. At the very least it looks important. And the book I found before did mention a sculptor, maybe it was the one who made the statue that held the orb. I feel like this orb and the eye layer might be key to get out of here. There is no regular exit after all. It's a bit of a disappointment that I had to get rid of Poker Face, but Sprint really saved me. Also it came at level 9 for some reason. I don't know why I thought Classless always came at level 1, but I guess not. And I already knew it, but Sprint really is an anomaly. Just like fast reading, a multiplier of 10% per level is just insane. It's the easiest skill to get to, as if the system was inviting everyone to get good at running away from things. I used to think I wouldn't need it anymore since I have wings, but that was short-sighted. I still feel weird about keeping it in the long run, but for now it's good to have. It even leveled up once while I was running for my life. I'm glad to be back to one of the safer layers. This one is one of the most interesting as well. There are remnants of the people who built this place all over. After recovering and channeling another rune, Sofia stood up and started moving, but after the first turn she took, the layer changed back to the trap layer. Oh please! That gave Sofia a suspicion that the chance to change layers might have something to do with how long she spent in them. But it couldn't be a specific time because the actual time it took was all over the place so far. She was tempted to just sit back down for a while again before going to try her theory, but something felt wrong about spending so much time doing nothing in this maze. So she just kept on exploring the trapped layer, updating her map every so often to mark the places she had explored. It was messy, but she wanted to keep track of exactly what part she had searched in what layer, so she used different cross-hatchings to keep track of that. Like this she would eventually have searched every nook and cranny of every layer. Before she could find anything worth her attention on the trap layer, she was back onto the wood layer again. That was a breath of fresh air. In the tight corridors of the maze, the monsters had nowhere to go to escape her whip as Perith kept them from ever reaching her. As she advanced in the direction with the most wood monsters she could find, their numbers weirdly kept increasing. Am I going to find a nest of these things? The origins of the roots? Maybe she would have, but she got sidetracked by a room with a closed metal door. After sending Perith inside via the graveyard and making sure it was safe, she entered too. The room was circular and almost empty. All there were 5 long dead skeletons sitting around an inactive ritual circle. Sofia instantly recognized it. That was the partial one from the book cover she had found. The full ritual from the book, the Great Hollow. And now that she stood before the completed thing, she was almost certain now, this was a god's rune. Chapter 196, The Great Hollow. Sofia's first instinct was to copy the thing on her bone slates. She was getting proficient at drawing with bone dominus, so it only took a second. She stored the drawing and circled around the ritual. What am I to do with this? I do not think this is random. I get the feeling that I need to use this somehow, but I don't know about activating a random god's rune again. It kind of looks like an apostle ritual, but it probably isn't. The door is locked from inside and there's no demon here. So unless they can go through walls like me. Since there were a few skeletons there, she tried to feed them to the book, but it wouldn't eat them. Must not be real skeletons then, unsurprising, but it's the first time I get to try in the maze. You never know what's real and what isn't during a trial. I'm pretty sure the black belt I got from the master is real, at least. From the corner of her vision, Sofia saw something shine in the middle of the circle. The light from Peritha's halo had reflected onto some kind of smooth grey pebble that was hard to see on the stone floor. Perhaps foolishly so, she stepped onto the ritual circle to see what the thing was. She realized what she did after the fact and quickly retracted her foot, but let out a sigh of relief as nothing happened. She did not want a repeat of what had happened when she had stepped onto the trap ritual around Zire back in the dungeon. Damn, I'm getting careless. This place is mentally draining. She asked Perith to grab the thing in her stead. The instant his bony fingers touched the pebble, the previously inactive and monoless ritual activated. Sofia cursed internally and was ready to defend herself, but there was no defending the forced layer change that happened. She was now in a similar room, carved directly into the stone. No more clear-cut maze, no more stone bricks, this was a natural cavern. There was nothing on the ground here, just her with her shield and Perith holding a grey pebble. Could have been worse. Now where am I? Yet another layer, but only accessible through the ritual? Sofia cautiously walked out of the round room. This was a genuine cave, with stalactites, mushrooms and an uncomfortably high level of humidity. The moist walls reflected the light of Peritha's halo in a myriad of glimmering spots. She cautiously advanced through the cave. It was strange how the cave had the exact same layout as the maze, despite being supposedly natural. As if the maze had been built to replicate it. There was one place Sofia absolutely wanted to check out in this new layer, the big room. So far it was always a good indicator of what each layer was about. She had a presentiment that it was where she would find something again. Hopefully it wouldn't be another horror. Before she could reach her destination, she felt space bend around her in a nauseating way, and she was suddenly back to the wood monster layer. Did I get ejected? That didn't feel like the usual layer change. It had also only been like a minute and a half. Much shorter than usual. She immediately tried drawing the ritual on the ground and touching the pebble. She was transported to the cavern again, and like clockwork, a minute and a half later, she returned to the wood layer. Finally something with clear rules. That'll be useful to escape the eye thing if I meet it again. Well, only if it goes away after I change layer. With a new goal, Sofia backtracked her way toward the big room. During that time, she switched layers twice, once to the undead one and once to the empty one. She arrived at the room while still on the empty layer. Taking out her mithril dagger, she carved the ritual circle on the ground, but she changed her mind before she took the grey pebble out of her storage. She couldn't forget the abomination she had found there on the eye layer, as well as the necrotic ooze on the undead layer. This could be dangerous. She stepped out of the room and did the ritual a bit further away in the corridor. It didn't work. I don't like this. She went further and further. Eventually it worked, and she understood why it hadn't before. Oh, cave in. It didn't take me there because it couldn't. That's quite a serious collapsed section too far to even try to cross with the graveyard. Well. Sofia could only wait in place until her time ran out. Back on the empty layer, she used the ritual circle she had carved previously directly inside the room. She appeared in a similar space in the caverns. The two entrances were blocked by cave-ins, isolating this place from the rest of the cave network. There was only one thing in the room, a huge, 10 meters tall statue of a 7-armed god sitting cross-legged against a wall. How did Sofia know it was a god? It couldn't be anything else. Also, it had the rune carved on its forehead. Its appearance was demon-like and disturbing, but it was fascinating at the same time. The god was outwardly handsome and had well-defined lean muscles, but everything about it felt slightly wrong. It was a strange sensation, one Sofia had a hard time describing. Like something that came close to the real thing, but missed a crucial detail, only for the whole thing to end up being nothing but disturbing. Sofia decided not to dwell on that too much. I wonder if there's a way to pilfer some divine essence here. I should focus on the trial before anything else. The god held out his 7 hands in a semicircle in front of him, palm open and turned up, except for one, grasping a rugged stone orb. Looking closer at the hands, they each wore a signet ring on the middle finger. Each signet ring showed a different symbol. One was a humanoid figure, another a skull, another an eye, one was empty, and one was a mess of spikes. The one holding a stone orb wore a signet with an image of the 7-armed god. It didn't take a genius to do the correlation with the maze's different layers. The surprising thing was the 7th signet, one that was supposedly a layer she had never seen. The symbol for this one was empty. It wasn't blank like the other one, the center part of the ring simply didn't exist, it was a hole. Not very helpful, is it? But at least, I think I understand the goal of this maze now. The room was just wide enough for Sofia to fly, so she flew up to the hand with the blank signet ring. She placed the blank black orb she found in the empty layer in the god's hand. The statue's hand closed on the orb, and Sofia felt a wave of mana flow through her. Surprised, she looked around with her mana vision, but there wasn't anything unusual happening as a result of the mana wave. She did however spot a place where a lot of mana gathered, the signet with a hole. Mana? The symbol for this one is mana. Mana, layers. Sofia's time ran out, and she found herself back in the empty layer again. She sat down to think things over. The mana layer is the 3rd hand. The order of the signets, from left to right was eyes, human, mana, skull, spikes, blank, god effigy. That's exactly just how the world layers work. Just like the Midanisit tablets. The eye layer is the god's plane. To be fair, my interaction with the eye monster reflected scripture's presence very well. The human layer is the one with remnants of real human activity, though everyone has been turned to wood creatures, this is the physical plane. Then the mana plane is a layer I haven't accessed yet. The skull is for the undead layer, which is the spiritual plane. The spikes for the traps and the recessed. Blank for Zangdar's empty plane. And finally, the deep. The Great Hollow. The Maze of Zar. Is Zar the human lord who led the construction of this maze, corrupted by a newfound artifact as the diary suggests? Or is it this god? A god in the deep? Now that felt very wrong. As far as Sofia knew, there was no god to be found in the deep, only the 4 lords. Afinareth. Ormancleith. The Orator. And I know the last name. It's just. That was such a terrible time. When I try to remember, everything is blurry. I have it though. I'm sure I have it. A. Eda. Edrazaketh. Edraz. Raz. Maze of Zar. No way, right? A bit of a convoluted conclusion, but this whole place is convoluted. So this giant sculpture would be. Chapter 197, Prayers. The more Sofia thought about it, the more it felt deeply wrong. Why would this part of the trial be all about one of the 4 lords? She doubted it was specific to her, so everyone had to go through this. That was with the system supposedly knowing very little about the deep and its lords. And out of all things, they would choose this exact maze as the test? One that used not a simple god's rune, but a lord's one? The same lords who would erase people for saying their names? If she was correct, this was incredibly irresponsible. Dangerous. Not for her, maybe, but for everyone else. 2 other people still made it through, so it's probably not that bad. And that gives another very good reason as to why nobody is allowed to talk about the trial. Because for a normal person, talking about this sculpture is something with the potential to get you erased from the planet and everyone's memory. Sofia returned to the cavern layer to look at the statue again. What could possibly be the real-world use of that thing outside of the trial? Who could have even made it? I have to say. If that's really the 4th lord. I like Afinareth's appearance better. Somehow she convinced herself that she was right about her wild guess despite the little evidence she had. She wanted it to be true, it helped her feel safer. Learning of what she thought was the hidden existence behind this place, she felt a bit more at home. She kneeled before the statue and did something she hadn't done in forever, she prayed. I am sorry that I thought badly about your appearance, but it is weird. I will be using your rune a lot to get out of here, so I hope you do not mind. Thank you for helping Afinareth find me when I was stuck in the loop. Sincerely, I am the deep's devoted Saintess. And since the orator wills it, please watch me slay a god in your name. Sofia froze. Someone had received her prayers, it seemed. Someone that wasn't Idrazaketh. Her mouth opened without her consent. Look at you, offering your thanks to the Annihilator himself. Such a funny little thing. Are you enjoying the book, Saintess? I enjoy it a lot, yes. Thank you. Are you always listening to me? Cease the foolish act. Get to work. And never again call for his name, the orator ordered, having Sofia point at the statue, lest you invite trouble you cannot handle the consequences of. Understood. Was that all you came for? Can you help me a little, or is that cheating? Orator? I know you are still there. Never have I been so disrespected. Do you not understand your position, youngling? To be perfectly honest, not really. Are you technically my adoptive uncle or something of that sort? Since my name is, you know. You may think what you will. We are largely unconcerned by such matters. Well, which is it, then? Bringing up my position then backing out like this? Also, what was it last time? I shall never show up again. Can you explain the titles, then? Why, orator, for example, is that a title you gave to yourself? Very well, considering you have shown an actual willingness to accomplish your quest, I shall indulge your curiosity for a brief instant. Gods, as you call them, are aimless materializations of concepts. We are the opposite. The titles themselves are nothing but fanciful words your kind uses to materialize our functions, though some of us have taken to using them. Your function is to announce things, then, as the orator. It is not. Such as the Annihilator's function is not to annihilate, or this world would have long ceased to exist. Now return to your task, the quest is as good as revoked should you fail here already. As the orator left, Sofia was immediately sent back to the empty lair. She felt oddly refreshed, so she checked her stats. She still had the rune on, but she had been fully healed. Seeing her mana be full while wearing a rune was unnatural. Either way, she was grateful for the unexpected help. I was right, then. I'm getting really good at sniffing out anything to do with the deep now. Sofia then started making plans to find all the orbs. She still had 5 to get. The one from the wood monster's lair should not be too hard to get, she thought. She had a suspicion that if she just kept going in the direction she had been going before, it would be there. The one from the undead lair was much more problematic. Most of the monsters there were things she absolutely couldn't fight unless she resorted to high bolting, and she remembered how that had worked against the stone drake. At least now she could explore it a bit easier. She just had to go through the parts with dangerous monsters by using the cavern lair, since she had the ritual to go there at will. Even then, I have to be careful. There's no guarantee that where I'll reappear will be safe. The trap layer would be the most annoying to search for, as it was slow to navigate through but not too dangerous. That's still the easy part, though. Getting the orb from the eye layer is the real hurdle. First of all, I only know of one way to get there, which is after taking another orb. And I'm not even sure that's how it works exactly, but supposing it is, I will only have 4 attempts. Secondly, I have no idea where it is. Thirdly, there's this creature from the depths of all nightmares. And for the last orb, I don't even know. It should be in the maze layer representing mana, but I haven't found that. Supposedly it would be in between the woodman and the undead layer. Sofia thought about her options for a while in the calm of the empty layer. Now that she had a better idea of what she had to do, she wasn't condemned to walking aimlessly in the maze forever anymore. Her first plan was a bit of a boring one, and she feared that maybe it would push her over some kind of hidden time limit, but she couldn't see a better way to handle the eye monster. She trained. Having Perith watch her from the end of the empty corridor she was in, no matter how many times she turned, Sofia was never taken to another layer. So she ran. Sprint reached level 11. Sprint reached level 30. It's not going up anymore. That should be enough, right? My speed doubled from when I began. It's not an incredible solution, but if the thing cannot catch me then it's as good as dead. Kind of. Now to recast the rune and get to work. Her solution to finding the orbs in the easy-to-access layers hadn't really changed. She already had a full map, so she only needed to explore the whole thing. The first one she was transported to was the traps one, and so she got to work exploring again. Using Perith as an anchor to prevent layer changes worked perfectly. As long as he walked to a corner and could see both Sofia coming toward him and the direction where she would turn, the layer never changed. Using that technique, the orb of the trap layer was the first she found. Hidden away in a far corner of the maze, there were more traps in the room she found the orb in than she could count. That was no big issue to her. She sent the paladins one by one to die in there, and eventually, most of the traps were disarmed and she could go get the orb herself. Green orb engraved with spikes, you're mine. This was a good confirmation that these orbs were the overall goal of the maze. Sofia was ready as she pocketed the orb, and as she thought, the statue which was holding the orb opened its eye, and Sofia was sent to the eye layer. The layer bathed in bluish light and its walls covered in eyes was still just as disturbing as it used to be. So far, no monster. Good. Sofia ran around, exploring as much of this layer as she could. It seemed the monstrosity that had chased her before had retracted and returned to its room. Since she now knew how to prevent an unwanted layer change, Sofia explored the whole thing under the many eyes' unblinking gaze and came to a conclusion. The eye layer's orb was either in the small dead-end corridor behind the monster's room, or inside of the monster itself. If it's behind, then maybe I can see a way. But if the monster has it, I don't really have a solution. 2 people passed this? How did they deal with that thing? Chapter 198, Annoyance. With the exploration of the eye layer out of the way, Sofia would have now liked to understand how to leave it. Last time it had been a close call with the monster, now she should be able to easily outrun it, in theory at least, but it was still risky to awaken it. From what she had seen last time, the amalgam monster was like a tidal wave, it looked like it would flood the entire maze if given enough time. With that in mind, baiting it around the maze to loop back around and check the room behind it was unlikely to work. Last time it woke up when I got too close, but maybe there's a way to prevent that, but I have my doubts. I had the rune on last time and it didn't help. Does it have to do with the eyes? Maybe something like invisibility could do the trick, but I do not have that. Sofia spent a few minutes trying everything she could think of to get the eyes on the walls to stop staring at her. Her theory was that if someone managed to make the eyes lose sight of them, it could be an encouraging sign that the monster might not wake up. However, she would never be able to confirm it, as no matter what she tried, the eyes never stopped looking in her direction. If Perith or a book summon walked away, some of the eyes would look at them too, so this was no good either. For all I know, this might mean nothing anyway, what else can I do? Sofia only saw 2 possible choices for the moment, either she stored Perith and ran a bit more or spun around on herself to try getting out, or she could bolt it and see what happens. That was how, standing at the furthest point in a straight line she could be from the monster, she held an angel's bolt stronger than any she had ever used. The monster was still just some kind of a colored mass far away, very easy to aim at. With her rune still on, she pushed more and more mana into the spell until her arm started to disintegrate from the sheer heat and power gathered in her hand. She let that thing loose, almost 4 times the power of the original. Before anything else happened, she was ejected backwards from the recoil. Perith was there to catch her and soften the blow. The wild trait of energy hit the still immobile form of the horrendous monster. Sofia's senses were a bit overwhelmed as she was first blinded, then deafened and burned by the heat wave. So far all was going as expected. She couldn't heal because of the rune, but that wouldn't prevent her from running after she confirmed what happened to the monster. Her mana senses would be more than enough to navigate an empty maze she knew the whole layout of. Perith could still see, so Sofia looked through his eyes for now. When the explosion receded, it first revealed a portion of the maze which was only the black speckled stone, now stripped of all its usual stone bricks. The eyes had escaped the explosion and all gathered in a huge swarm at the edge of the destroyed area. Finally, Sofia saw the purple eye monster. It was still alive, and now very awake. Already, countless maws were appearing all over its form. It was hard to tell whether the bolt had inflicted any real damage at all. Expanding like a slime about to explode, it filled everything as it poured through the corridor. Sofia stored Perith and ran away. I expected as much, but I'm still disappointed. She easily outran the monster, its distant roaring and the shaking of the whole maze a constant reminder that it was still chasing. Not too surprisingly, there was no layer change happening at all until she found herself in a dead end and turned around, then she was back on the woodman layer. So at least this way out is consistent, nice. I also now know I cannot kill that thing no matter what, so the orb better be behind it, or I'm never getting it. Sofia sat down and let the blood loss from her mangled arm finish the job of activating her rune. After her revival, some rest, and the applying of another rune, Sofia got up and started hunting for this level's orb. She felt she had a solid idea to get the eye layer's orb too, as long as it really was in the corridor behind the monster. With Perith as an impenetrable front line and the Bone Dominus aim-assisted bone whip hits, even the countless wood monsters haunting the deeper reaches of this layer couldn't do anything against Sofia. Eventually, she found the source of this layer's corruption. It was a huge root piercing a room from top to bottom. It had smaller roots growing off of it at the end of which grew the wood monsters that Sofia had been exterminating for hours. The root did not react when she came near. Is that how these things reproduce? That explains how there are so many. Where is the orb though? Sofia attacked the big root, expecting some kind of defense mechanism to activate, or any kind of counter-attack really. But there was nothing. After enough whip hits, the root started burning. There was still no orb-holding statue to be seen anywhere, but there was something interesting. The root pierced through the hard stone. The seemingly indestructible black speckled stone encasing the whole maze was a testament to its artificial nature inside of the trial. So far there hadn't been anything that could circumvent that, even the graveyard skeletons were blocked by whatever was under. But now, the root was burning and revealing a hole through that encasing. Or so Sofia thought, but it turned out that the root was also encased inside the hard stone, as if a part of the maze itself. That being said, it still offered a way up and down to who knows where as it burned away. Following it upward could be a way out of the maze if it led to the tree trunk. But what interested Sofia right this moment was the way down instead. With the root burning away, her mana senses could feel further down, and there was something there. After waiting for the bottom part of the root to burn away, Sofia jumped down the hole, finding herself in the weirdest layer of the maze yet. It looked like every layer except the cavernous one had been smashed into one. There were walleyes, more roots, traps, and bones laying around everywhere. Came one thing and found another. This is the monolayer, it has to be. Sofia was elated to have stumbled upon something she had no idea how to reach. She felt that with that, this floor 99 was pretty much over with. She just needed to get the orb here, and she had a good plan for the eye layers one, leaving only the wood and undead layers to comb through. There were no monsters in the misshapen layer unless one counted the stray walleyes as such. It made Sofia's exploration fast and efficient. She found the orb statue in no time. Except the statue was broken, and the glass-looking orb shattered. What? Sofia's good mood crumbled in an instant. Seriously? Is that normal? Is the trial broken? Is this meant to be like this? Sir Scribe, is this an error? There was no answer. Usually, when the system fucked up and she complained, the scribe would notice, but since it stayed silent, it could only mean one thing. This was how the trial was meant to go. Sofia picked up the largest remaining part of the orb. She could infer from it that the orb was originally an empty glass sphere. Examining the hundreds of scattered fragments, it did not seem to have any inscriptions or anything special about it. Was I wrong from the beginning? Is the goal not to gather the 7 orbs? What then? Or am I meant to fix this? I could go ahead and get restore command from my keywords. That would probably do the trick. But I don't like doing it like that. Not only does it feel like a waste of keywords, but also, what would it say about that trial? Nobody can complete it if they don't have a skill or the technical know-how and tools to repair this thing. That just doesn't feel right at all. So far everything was hard but never unfair. Even the asshole fleeing orb on floor 97 could be caught without anything fancy like flying as long as you have any strong movement skill, which everyone should have at this point. What is the intended solution? Unwilling to resort to making a skill for this unless she was completely unable to find another way, Sofia returned to the hole left by the root. It had kept burning, and now she could also follow the hole up. Will this lead to the eye layer? The root came from sideways more than up. Sofia followed the gallery left behind after it had burned for a while until the space around her started to feel unstable. She knew that sensation, that was the edge of the trial zone. She had never tried going past it before, but she had a gut feeling that it would be a very bad idea for some reason. Nothing here either then. I did so much for so little progress. This is getting annoying. Next I'm cooking a grilled necrotic ooze. I've had enough. It feels like I have been stumbling around for weeks. This maze is a giant pain. Chapter 199, all clicking together. Sofia knew enough about the necrotic ooze from the book on slimes that she felt she could fight it without a false immortality rune. The layer of the maze with the undead was a pain to navigate due to many dangerous monsters like the long-clawed zombies, that small ogre Perith couldn't handle. However, she found a whole section with nothing but skeletons. The mage ones were a bit of a pain, but overall, Bone Dominus helped her clean it all up. She had tried checking the area behind the ooze by having a layer change occurring from there in the other layers, but no matter how long she tried, she didn't manage to get it to send her there on the undead layer. After a few hours of trying, she had enough, and the ooze's fate was set in stone. Now that she had all that free space in the maze, all she had to do was to lure the ooze in there. That started with a small bolt. Just a regular one like the original skill? She knew the monster of rot and death would regenerate the damage in less time than it took for the explosion to clear up. As expected, it's coming. Sofia had a coughing fit. The smell. Compared to her, the ooze was quite slow. It was about half as fast as the amalgam monster from the eye layer, a terrifying speed for a regular person, but barely a jog for Sofia as she was now. She patiently lured the mountain of death into the area she had cleared, sending small electric zaps every so often just to make sure it wouldn't get bored of chasing her. Perith was acting as a moving observer, making sure no layer change happened during the fight. Sofia had doubts about whether blasting the ooze like this was a good idea. She had a good feeling that the orb was probably inside it. Wouldn't it be a perfect place to hide an orb, among an ooze's many fake cores? But considering how the mana orb had been shattered before she even got to it, she feared that if it was really there, she might destroy that one too. If it's really in there, I don't have another way to get it out anyway, so. With the ooze busy pursuing Sofia in a loop around the empty corridor, it gave her ample time to charge a huge bolt. The only tricky part being to time it well so she was ready to release it while at one end of a corridor with the ooze at the other end. Just as a safety measure. It wasn't a huge issue, and the ooze got treated to the same kind of angel's bolt the eye amalgam had brushed off. The aftermath of the explosion was about the same, and Sofia chewed on a healing candy while Perith looked at the result for her. No more ooze. Finally, a big monster who has the decency to die when I blast it with more than half my mana in one go. Thank you, disgusting pile of flesh, you won't be remembered. Damn, that thing burns well. Amidst the blue flames and ash, there was only one thing that seemed solid and intact. That's the orb, right? Sofia took out some bones and made a long stick like a giant ladle and gave it to Perith, so that he could scoop out the orb without having to touch the flames and the remaining burning fluids of the ooze. As soon the long bone ladle touched the orb, Sofia was sent to the eye layer. Shit. I hoped that wouldn't happen since it was an indirect contact. Though she cursed, Sofia was glad that she took the time to bait the ooze out of the middle room before killing it. Avoiding having to be teleported right next to the amalgam monster was almost the whole reason she did that after all. She stored the orb and strolled through the eye layer while her mana came back up and her arm healed. She snuck a peek at the amalgam monster from afar. The walls of that place were still missing since her last bolt, but the monster had regained its lair anyway. Sofia sighed and found the nearest dead end to leave the eye layer. I only have 2 more opportunities to enter the eye layer. Maybe just one depending on the solution to the monolayer orb issue. As long as I can touch the statue. Sofia was now on a quest to find the wood layer's orb. 3 days later, she hadn't found it. She had killed all of the wood monsters, searched everywhere, looked into every room, every corner. No statue, no orb. She had found a few more random books with at most one readable sentence or two, more unimportant stuff, another route that pierced 2 walls and led to nowhere. But no orb. She thought she was going crazy, but for lack of a better option, she was now walking through the whole thing again, but slowly inspecting absolutely everything in detail with her mana senses. As she walked past the cells she had first appeared in again, she abruptly stopped, and couldn't contain a short bout of nervous laughter. This has to be a fucking joke. Whoever did this is so cruel. There it was. She could clearly see the weird stone statue holding the orb. It was covered by a piece of dust cloth, inside of an old rotten wooden barrel, not 200 meters away in a straight line from where the maze started. This was a central corridor that you could use to go in every direction, one she had walked through several times. But who pays attention to a random crappy barrel? There are hundreds of them on this layer. At this point she didn't know whether to laugh or to cry, she just ordered Perith to grab the whole barrel. As she had hoped, while the statue still held the orb, nothing happened. 2 pieces of good news at once. At least there's that. I'm almost done with this hell. Perith hauled the big barrel all the way to the knight's bedrooms, going as far as possible from the main room without going into a dead end, he let it down. Sofia's hand effortlessly smashed through the rotten wood, ripped off the cloth from the statue and touched the orb, storing it at the same time. She appeared at the same place in the eye layer, in the only corner of it she hadn't explored, the section guarded by the amalgam monster. She didn't have to search, the statue holding the orb was right there, at the very end of the corridor. It was a disfigured fanged monster like the other statues, but unlike every other statue until now, it had no eyes. Sofia walked up to it, grabbed the orb and stored it. Nothing happened. Can't send me to the eye layer when I'm already there at? I can't say I didn't expect something to happen when I took the orb, but maybe it's better that way. Now all I need is the mana orb. The statue was already in a dead end. Sofia stored Perith and turned around, she was sent back to the empty layer. Sofia walked to the big room, and using the ritual circle that was already there on the ground from her previous teleports, she took out the grey stone to enter the cavernous layer. The giant sculpture of the Annihilator was still waiting, 5 of his 7 hands empty. One by one, Sofia handed him the orbs. The eye layer's orb in the leftmost hand, the wood layer orb in the next. She skipped the mana orb because she didn't have it. Next was the orb she took from the ooze, then the one from the trap layer. Each hand closed around their orbs, leaving only one left. The mana orb then. Do I really need to go for restore command? After a minute and a half, Sofia was sent back to the empty layer, forcing her to activate the ritual again. Next she flew up to the empty hand and tried to just send a bunch of mana on it. It was a random idea but she felt it could have worked. It didn't. Nice try. Well. The other orbs were all full, big spheres of weird stones. The mana orb though, looked like an empty glass sphere. I think it's not too far-fetched to guess it used to be full of mana. And I would think the glass itself was nothing special, because it broke before I even got there, while the ooze's orb survived not only the ooze's corrosive blood but also a triple angel bolt. So, if just mana doesn't work, can't I just make another orb out of anything? Sofia made an empty bone sphere, put it in the statue's open hand and tried to fill it with mana. It only took Sofia a few seconds to realize why this wouldn't work. Mana was very volatile and it didn't exactly tend to stay in a ball without moving. As she expelled it from her body without giving it a clear goal through a spell formation, it just spread around, filling up the room. She tried to focus it and force it to stay there without success. The whole process was being interrupted every 90 seconds by a forceful return to the empty layer which Sofia was starting to find infuriating. She was about ready to give up on that solution and try to find something else when she remembered something. It drove her crazy that she took so long to think about that. She still had the 3 decoy orb from the trial's first phase floor 5, the ones expressly made to be filled up with mana. They're even the perfect size. Lords Almighty, how did it take me so long to think about this? Well, they're also designed to blow up when filled halfway, but that's all enchantments, right? Taking out one of the decoy orbs and observing it closely, there were indeed small ritual circles engraved all over it. Subtle enough to be invisible at a glance, but obvious if you knew they were there. There were clean ways to render these ritual circles useless, but Sofia couldn't be bothered and did it the easiest way, scratching the orb all over with her nails. There, no more traps. As she was transported back to the empty layer, Sofia didn't go back to fill up the orb with mana yet. She was pretty sure that now her trick would work. And if it did, she might as well be ready for whatever came next. So first of all, feeling safe in the empty layer and with Perith to look over her, she took out a bed and slept. When she woke up, Sofia transferred Perith back to his alpha skeleton, she refilled her bone storage by cutting off her wings, had a nice meal and toilet break. She put on 2 false immortality runes, brushed and tied her hair, reorganized her items in her storage ring. When she finally felt ready, she returned to the cavern layer, and filled the decoy orb with mana. She harbored a wicked smile when the hand closed on the orb. Sofia flew back a few meters to admire her work. The giant statue of the Annihilator was now complete. Its 7 arms started moving. Chapter 200, At the Edge of Heaven. The statue's arms formed a circle, and one by one, the orbs lit up, showering the cavern in many shades of bright light. As if it was nothing but dust, the light was sucked in and collapsed into a point in the center of the circle before expanding to form a smooth round hole through reality. Inside, there seemed to be some kind of room with small pedestals. I have to go in then? That's some very strange space magic. A bit wary, Sofia flew through the hole, which closed behind her. I'm trapped inside? The room wasn't menacing. It was a round space like a cylinder. Sofia had landed in the center of 7 small pedestals that reached her waist. They were all marked with the symbol of one of the orbs, and on 5 of them sat a small trinket, while on the other 2 were copies of the small grey stone that activated the ritual used to warp to the cavern lair. Not a final trick but a reward? Yes please. Thank you. Since 2 of the trinkets were replaced by the stones, and 2 people had finished this floor before her, it was obvious what the deal was. Exchange the stone for an item. The previous people took the ones from the mana pedestal and the spirit pedestal already. Can I identify the items? Of course not. And they give no explanation either. So in order. The item for the god's plane is an eye pendant. How fitting. Whatever I'm taking, it's not that. For the physical plane, it's a golden bracer. For archers? No need for this. When am I ever going to use a bow? Sofia still spent some time observing the bracer up close. It was a very fine piece of armor with intricate carvings on it. If she had to guess, it was probably elven in origin, but she had little experience with such things. Mana and spiritual plane already taken. That'll facilitate the choice because the temptation to pick a mana-related item would be great. The recessed item is a sharp-nailed mummified finger. Again, no. Next was the item linked to the margin. It was a pair of tiny spherical earrings made from glowing orange gems. Maybe these. Last but not least was a small stone ring. At first glance, it looked weird and jagged, but looking closer, that was because it was made of 7 small interlocking arms, just like the statue had used to teleport her here. Ring related to the Annihilator. Crazy to see this in a trial made by the system. I remember the high-tier scribe said they didn't know much about the deep Winolith identified the mark of Afinareth with the scroll. Either it was lying or... Well, I could be thinking too much into it, it's just a statue and a ring, anyone could have found them. Especially the admins, they had to have at least known that the deep was a thing. Else how do we explain this floor? Sofia grabbed the 7-armed ring and placed her grey stone on the pedestal instead. There was no need to spend hours thinking about the choice, who knew what the items did anyway. Given the choice to take something related to the deep, how could she not take it? She only hoped that it would be usable. Maybe something related to space magic. The moment her grey stone touched the pedestal, Sofia was seamlessly teleported to the waiting room. It was not the usual sight. This waiting room had no door with a 5-minute countdown, instead, there was a round stairwell in the middle going up. There were windows all around from which sunlight shone in the night sky. That seems wrong. Sofia felt strangely light. She looked at where the scoreboard should be, only to find Sen tinkering with it, arm deep into the wall. Is everything all right? That jump-scared Sen, whose arm popped out of the wall, bringing pieces of it along. Oh, you actually made it here. Aha. Well, congratulations. That makes you the 3rd person to reach the 100th floor of the spire, no small achievement. Thank you. Did something happen with the scoreboard? Sen had an ugly forced smile on his face like a kid found with his hand in the cookie jar. Well. It's been a while since anyone made it so far, you know, stuff broke. I hadn't noticed it but since you managed to beat the old breeze, I had to come check if everything was in place. And yet, this isn't. Can't you just tell me what would be on there? You should know, right? Oh, of course. I just hoped to have it repaired before you finished the maze but there goes that. You are currently ranked 3rd. Me and someone else failed here, so if you win you will be 1st. In fact, depending on how well you perform you might end up 1st even if you fail, but good luck with that. You failed here? Didn't you previously say something like you hoped multiple of us would pass you? Was that some kind of sick joke? Hey, an old man can dream. I would be genuinely happy if the others made it here too. I see. Can I ask what you took from the maze? Sen smiled and grabbed the pendant hanging around his neck that was hidden under his toga until now. It was a flat white rectangle of marble. Like a blank playing card. That was the Mana Plains item, I was the first to get there so I could have gone for anything. I thought this couldn't be a wrong option. Remember how you were surprised that my body was entirely mana? That is part of what it does. The other person after me took the Spirit Plains dragon mask, though she wouldn't share what it did. You took the ring, right? Sure did. How can I know what it does? Oh, you should be able to identify it now. I would love to stay here and talk more, but I need to take care of new trial takers right now. Just take the stairs whenever you are ready, no time limit. This is the last floor, it is a unique opportunity, enjoy it, Sofia, and try not to die. I will be back to help you through your level up as per our previous deal. Good luck. With a smile and a wink, Sen was gone. He gave up on repairing the scoreboard. Sofia's first reflex was to walk up to one of the windows. She really felt much lighter than usual and it was weird to move around in that environment. She looked out to a black starry sky, and the sun was also in view, which she had a hard time making sense of. Am I so high up that the sky disappeared? Looking down, she felt instant vertigo. This was not just high up, this was so high up that she could see the planet's edges. So it's really a ball. It's different to see it in person. Mana and air should be extremely sparse here, but it feels normal. I guess the spire is handling that. Sofia lost herself in observing the planet below. This already felt like an incredible reward. Most impressive were the other trial towers which she could see from there, similarly piercing the sky. Content to have contemplated this sight enough, Sofia refocused on the trial. Alright. First the ring, then the stairs. Ringed Arms of Tsar, found in the eponym maze by Administrator Redacted, this ring of unknown origins uses magic that the system cannot perfectly reproduce. Really? Redacted? This is a low blow, had me expecting some actual interesting information for a second. The rest isn't much more useful either. Ringed Arms of Tsar, advanced analysis equals 88,888 mana. Oh. Well, I have all the time I want so that isn't an issue. After dispelling her runes, Sofia played around with the ring, waiting for her mana to regenerate to 88,888. She didn't dare to put the ring on before knowing what it did exactly, at least it looked like it would fit on her fingers. As soon as she could, she paid for the advanced analysis. Ringed Arms of Tsar, found in the eponym maze by Administrator Redacted, this ring of unknown origins uses magic that the system cannot perfectly reproduce. Carved to look like 7 interlocking arms, it is made from the purest part of an Adamian core and infused with an unknown material. These properties make it nigh indestructible but also impossible to alter. This ring has 2 states, offering different effects. Manaless state, when this ring is devoid of mana, the wearer may activate collapse at any time to make the ring instantly absorb all out-of-body mana in a large area. Mana-fueled state, as long as this ring holds mana, only obtainable through collapse, it enhances the destructive power of the wearer's offensive magic. The stored mana will be drained passively over time, and more will be used whenever offensive magic is enhanced. May you bring all things to their destined end. At this rate the angel bolts won't lag behind the original for long. The collapse is absurdly powerful too, that can counter pretty much any spell if timed properly. Not a bad pick, though the last line of the description is a bit scary. Is that unusual thing with advanced analysis? Sofia put the ring on a random finger over the glove she got from Afinareth. That was now her hand of the deep. If she held her skeleton book with it, it technically had items from 3 out of the 4 lords at once. Ridiculous. I only miss a bauble from Ormoncleith now for a full set. With that handled, Sofia prepared for the last floor again. There was actual sunlight which made the sun ritual much stronger, so she did not have to wait too long for her mana. Out of the book she summoned the 3 Templars and the High Priest, emptying all the fog. Then she got to full mana again, and recast 2 false immortality runes. That was a good way to cheat some extra mana as just the summons cost her 80 out of her 94,000 mana points. Finally armed and armored, with her most powerful skeletons at the ready, Sofia looked up, and took her first step onto the spiral staircase. Show me the final test, system. This Saintess is ready. Chapter 201, Victory or Defeat. Sofia climbed a few steps. The low gravity was too weird for her, so she used Bone Dominus to make her bone armor denser and heavier. It offered more protection but she usually didn't do it because it would slow her down too much. Now it was actually helping. When her weight felt about right, she started her ascension again. Steps came, one after the other, there were no sounds other than her own heavy footsteps. Looking up, Sofia could only see more stairs. How much higher is this going to go? No one answered her question, but a few steps later, she started to hear something. Drums? Sofia wasn't extremely familiar with instruments and music, but she had at least some basic knowledge from her time in Huoaso and Drakran. Her steps were accompanied by the distant sound of drums, At first they were quite slow, but the higher she climbed, the faster and louder they got. One more instrument joined, then another, and before long it was a whole orchestra that followed the rhythm of her steps. Quite the welcome committee. Forget a skeleton musician, I need this orchestra. The melody was exhilarating, it made Sofia want to climb higher and faster. It made her want to fight. It made her blood boil. Finally, she reached the top, and as she stepped out of the stair and onto the flat roof of the tower, she was welcomed by a sea of stars all around. The orchestra was a group of ghosts, there were tens of them spread around the tower. The music slowly stopped, only leaving behind the sound of a single melancholic harp. Sofia felt the need to bow to the orchestra, but the other thing on the spire's rooftop wouldn't let her do that. Facing away from Sofia, sitting cross-legged at the center of the platform, was a single orc wearing nothing but a golden crown and burlap shorts. Big, burly, green-skinned, with large facial fangs, orcs were a rare sight, but not an unknown one. "Welcome, challenger," the orc greeted without turning around. He stretched his arms one by one and stood up slowly, showcasing a 3 meters tall body with a musculature worthy of a martial god. "I guess the final floor is a one-on-one fight? I am elated to have another challenger so soon. What is your name?" "Sofia Afinareth." The orc slowly turned around, revealing a scarred face with only one eye left. He looked over Sofia and grinned, "One who walks with the outer gods. Interesting." A spiked heavy plate armor formed around his body, the pieces appeared one by one and clamped together around him. Extending his right hand, a regular-looking long sword appeared in his grasp. Sofia readied her spells. "I have long awaited for someone worthy of my crown, now come, challenger." 2 lines of system text appeared to Sofia at once, one as a prompt, one as an identify result, and the ghostly orchestra flared up, the music started again, and the platform atop the spire expanded in all directions. The orc gave a final line before closing the visor of his helmet, which said it all. "I am victory. Prepare yourself." Ranking Spire Phase 2, Floor 100, Defeat. Incarnation of Victory, Level 199. Sofia was far beyond letting the stress of such a situation get to her. With a thought, her skeletons appeared, and the battle started. Beating a god was always the plan, this was merely a bit earlier than expected. The front line were the 3 Templars, behind were Perith and the High Priest, and Sofia was at the very back of the formation, spreading her wings. It would take 8 seconds until Perith's sanctified grounds were ready, it was the Templars' job to make that time. Victory charged forward, and a Templar took a step forward to block the incoming sword strike. The orc sword slid along the Templars and stabbed him in the head, sending him barreling backwards. Sun blessed? Interesting. The sun blessing was the singular thing allowing the Templar to still be fine. Mana, 62,430/94,000. Such a limited resource. Sofia's grip tightened on her weapon as the Templars leveraged their invincibility to stall for time, blue electricity ran across the scepter. Perith channeled his skill, but he also struck at the orc with a long spear a few times when he spotted an opening. Victory dodged them all, through masterful swordplay, he was holding off the 3 Templars with minimal efforts, sending them flying one after the other. The High Priest skeleton was busy channeling one of his stronger buffing skills for Perith. Sofia flew behind Perith's back. Imitating the fleeing black orb from the 97th floor, she tried to stay out of the god's direct line of sight. About 5 seconds in, Victory had sent all 3 paladins flying at once, he charged toward Perith. Perith teleported to Sofia, and in the instant he disappeared, she released the bolt. It was just a third of a real bolt's power, but it was still a dangerous weapon. Victory dodged the bolt, which exploded right behind him. It sent him forward and he front-rolled, landing upright on his feet. His armor looked undamaged. Reflexively, Sofia flew a bit further back. Perith fought off the god with heavy sword strikes which were all parried, as he then teleported back to Sofia to avoid the orc's counterattacks. Finally, Sanctified Grounds activated, and the Templars made their way back to the fight. It was Perith's turn to be on the offensive. Perith. Health, 1,189,783/1,189,783. Stamina, 450,068/450,068. Mana, 18,900/19,900. Perith and the god exchanged sword strikes, the clash of weapons punctuated by inflections of the ghostly orchestra. Victory parried all strikes with enough force to make Perith's sword bounce back. He was inflexible, immovable. Whenever he took a step forward, Perith could only take a step back. The god had used no magic yet. Despite that, Sofia was hopeful. He's not as fast as the master, we can do this. Sofia's graveyard of the righteous activated, graves sprouted all around the platform, and dozens of graveyard skeletons appeared around Victory, a literal swarm that he couldn't escape unless he grew wings. Mana gathered around his sword. Sofia reflexively gained some altitude. With a short war cry, the god spun on himself, only once, so fast that it almost looked like he hadn't moved. His sword, despite being quite short, left behind an arc of light all around him. The graveyard skeletons all died and the skill was forcefully cancelled. Holy, the scepter absorbed the backlash. The attack hadn't reached her, but it cut straight through both of Perith's legs. Health, 916 132/1 189 783. Sofia instantly used Heal Undead, because the cut was so clean, and with the help from Bone Dominus's Blessed Construct, the legs were almost instantly healed, and Perith regained a substantial amount of health. Though it was only for a third of a second, that small heal had cost Sofia more than 15,000 mana. Health, 979 337/1 189 783. I'm already down to less than 50,000 mana. The High Priest's spell finally activated, giving Perith a great speed boost. While Victory was busy repelling the Templars, Perith struck. This was the first solid hit against Victory. A clean strike on the shoulder. It had slightly dented his armor. This isn't going to work, is it? Perith being an obstacle in the god's way was the only reason Sofia was still alive after so long. She ordered the Templars to go as far as possible while Perith held the god back. Each of the orcs' attacks sent Perith reeling back. After a powerful strike, Perith's sword of light shattered. Before it could reform, the god threw his sword and grappled Perith. Like guided by a spell, the sword spun and drew a wide arc around Perith, going after Sofia. Perith couldn't teleport with the god latched onto him. He summoned his flying shields of light, but they all shattered, not even slowing the sword down. Sofia flew up, but the sword kept flying toward her, adjusting its trajectory. Collapse. All the mana around the platform instantly collapsed into the ring. Sofia could hardly handle the recoil from such a violent surge of energy. She felt the mana rush through her, unconcerned that she was in the path, as the gluttonous ring devoured it all. The air emptied from mana was stale and dead. Sofia fell, her wings no longer supported by anything. The sword, having lost its connection to Victory, whizzed past far over Sofia's head. Both Perith's, Sofia's, and Victory's magic armors had disappeared from the collapse, their mana absorbed into the ring. The ambient mana was slowly coming back, just like the buried cathedral's petrification curse when Perith purified an area of it. In less than a minute, it would be like nothing ever happened there. The three Templars had been far away at the borders of the platform, channeling spells. They unleashed their light severance in unison. The slashes of light were fast approaching the unarmored god. Victory let go of Perith and deflected two of them with his bare hands, grabbing the ethereal slices of light and crushing them. He was about to deflect the third with an elbow blow, but was held back by Perith's chains of the four seals. Victory's armor was already reforming over his body, but the slash hit him before, leaving a deep cut in his back and an explosion of green blood. Sofia almost celebrated with a scream of joy, but she held back, focusing on charging her angel's bolt as fast as possible. The battle was far from over. Victory's armor was almost fully reformed when he roared. It was an enraged war cry, charged with mana. The Templars were pushed away by the pressure and sent flying off of the platform, never to be seen again, and Sofia's cast was interrupted as she struggled not to suffer the same fate. She felt blood accumulate in her mouth. The simple shockwave from the shout had been enough to injure her. She had lost about a fifth of her health. Even Perith, who was recovering from his dispelled armor and shattered weapon, was destabilized by the shout. Victory flashed forward and punched Perith's unprotected spine. Perith couldn't defend properly. He teleported away to Sofia, but too late. Only his upper body arrived at his destination. Health, 453 690/1 189 783. Chapter 202, No Defeat. Perith could hardly fight without legs. Sofia stored him along with the Blessed Construct shield. She would lose the effects of both sanctified grounds and the blessing, but in the safety of her storage, Perith could recover. It would take 2 full minutes for him to be fully healed. It was impossible for Sofia and the High Priest skeleton to hold out for this long, but if she could recover his broken-off lower body, she could speed up the process. His health wouldn't fully come back, but with legs, he could fight. Sofia flew up as fast as she could. The ambient mana had recovered enough to allow her to do so. The High Priest had a control spell which he used to slow Victory. Health, 7010/10995. Stamina, 2755/3662. Mana, 46,532/94,000. Just enough for a full power bolt. Charging it would take too long. To speed it up, Sofia cast one in each hand. This would prevent her from doing anything else, but she only had to channel them for 15 seconds. Sofia was getting ready to flee from another magic-guided flying sword, but Victory had other plans this time. His armor's different parts rearranged, it left parts of his arms and legs exposed, but gave him armored wings. The High Priest cast his movement-restricting spell on Victory again and again, but it only slowed the god for a second each time before he forcefully broke the magic. With his wings ready, Victory flew straight to the skeleton. Sofia could only keep flying up into space as she watched the High Priest get helplessly thrown out of the platform. Like the Templars, he would be stuck at the bottom of the spire. 10 more seconds. Sofia felt the mana quickly becoming thinner and thinner as she flew away from the top of the tower. I cannot go any further. Victory flew straight for her. He was faster than Sofia. In 2 seconds, he crossed the distance she had in 5. His first attack was a stab with his sword. Sofia barely managed to hit the sword with her lightning-coated scepter. She was the one to be expulsed to the side from the collision as Victory sped past her. She took as much distance as she could, but Victory was too fast. He turned around and charged again, this time coming with a horizontal swipe. Sofia was slower, but her wings had much more maneuverability. Thrice, she narrowly avoided the sword strikes. But the unrelenting aerial assault of the god paid off. Sofia couldn't focus well while also channeling both her bolts. Her legs fell, cut clean through at the thighs. Overwhelmed by the sudden pain, she lost control of her flight and started crashing down. On the bright side, it allowed her to barely escape the next attack of the flying orc. Only 6 seconds. Health, 4122/10995. Stamina, 1330/3662. Mana, 18,606/94,000. She could lose sight of everything else, but she needed the bolts to keep growing at all costs. Victory plunged down. He intended to execute Sofia with a final magically enhanced sword strike. Sofia folded her wings. She added more and more bone to her bone armor, making her fall even faster. Victory was hot on her tail, his sword glowing with intense godly light. Just as she was about to hit the ground, she summoned the orichalcum egg around her. With both bolts raging in her hands now enclosed in the small space, Sofia was getting cooked alive. At least it cauterized the bleeding from her lost legs, she thought, trying to find the good in her situation. The shock of her impact with the platform made her dizzy, but it was her signal to empty the entirety of her bone storage. 10 tons of bones appeared, covering her egg in a last-ditch protective layer. She wanted to also take out the blessed construct to improve her defenses more, but it was too much to handle all at once. Victory's strike came. Sofia didn't need to see it to feel it coming. The god's strike cut reality in half. There was no defending from such a blow. Sofia's orichalcum egg was split open. The giant pile of bone did not even help. Sofia was split into 2 equal parts down the middle. She saw her health jump from 1,147 points to -9,738. Only the battle platform had been unaffected. Victory was spent, landing right next to Sofia. He was panting, trying to catch his breath as he used his sword as a crutch. The first rune activated, slowly bringing Sofia's split halves back together, regrowing her lost legs. Even in death, she only had a single thought, from the moment the attack came to the instant the rune finished, to revive her. To keep channeling her skills. Even as her health was in the negative, her clenched hands fed mana to the growing bolts of plasma. Even in death, her magic did not stop. 3 seconds later, the rune finished to revive her. Victory had been recovering, he only now understood what was happening. Sofia's first thought was, 1 second. Perith, still legless, appeared behind Victory. The god tried to fly away, he was held back by Perith's giant hands. Still on the ground, Sofia slammed the 2 fully grown bolts to her sides, 23,000 mana each, bolstered by the ringed arms of Tsar. This would be Sofia's largest explosion yet. The world turned white. The pain was so intense that it didn't hurt. Overwhelmed, Sofia's senses gave up. The hero, Perith, has succumbed. When the explosion died down, Sofia stood up, nothing but a charred corpse. She was still alive. For the first time, the first passive effect of venerable physique of the primeval void had saved her. Starting step, a single hit cannot take away more than 99% of your maximum health. She didn't see how exactly her 2 bolts and their aftermath counted as 1 hit, but the system had its ways, and she wouldn't complain if she was the one to benefit from it. Perith had died, and her eyes were not functional. She had to focus and look around with her mana senses. The mana around her was still in a storm, bubbling, churning in the aftermath of 2 extremely powerful attacks. Did I win? The only system message she had gotten was the announcement of Perith's demise. Through the torrents of mana around her, her mana senses finally found the god. He was immobile, but plenty of mana still coursed through his massive body, much more than Sofia ever held. Health, 110/10,995. Stamina, 3,654/3,662. Mana, 12/94,000. Sofia sighed. Sofia dumped a pile of stuff from her storage ring on the ground to potentially use later, and her mana hit 0. She was ready to catch her heart as it escaped her chest, black and pulsating. As she had done in the past, she took a bite. Horns, hide, tail. The transformation was as exhilarating as she remembered. She felt power surge through her body. The remaining rune prevented the transformation from healing her, but she felt that it was an unimportant detail. Health, 1,703/179,280. Stamina, 178,888/179,280. Mana, 0/179,280. Health is a useless number in the face of a god. If nothing else, at least her vision recovered from the transformation. Victory was in a bad state, similar to how Sofia had been, a charred corpse. Some bones were even visible. However, still standing, with all his weight on his sword, he was alive. Sofia dashed forward. With sprint now in her passive skills, the speed of her demon form was unmatched. It was almost like teleportation, but Victory still reacted in time. His body reacted by itself. Sofia had only time to process this when she saw the god's mana come to life by itself to prop him up and aim his sword. Sofia was impaled on the god's sword, but her clawed hands reached the god's head too. As her last breath escaped her, she clenched Victory's skull. Bone Dominus. First, the orc's skull exploded, and Sofia saw a system message as her consciousness faded. Bone Dominus reached level 2. She knew something had changed, but she didn't know what. As the second rune activated, she felt Bone Dominus go wild. The skill's dominion could now spread from one bone to the other. Sofia's demon body limped on the sword. In a chain reaction, the entirety of the god's skeleton was turned to shrapnel, one bone at a time. Sofia's dead body slid off the sword. 3 seconds later, she woke up again. Even burned to a crisp and without bones, defying all common sense, the god was still standing. It was siphoning all nearby mana so much so that Sofia could sense it without trying. A gargled cry escaped his ravaged throat. I am Victory. Sofia sprung up, in a flurry of fists, she battered the immortal orc to a mush. And yet, he kept roaring, his body was healing, faster than she could destroy it. Still, she managed to at least damage the arms enough to steal his sword, and at the last second, she also grabbed the golden crown from atop the god's head. I will see no defeat. Sofia was sent flying by the enraged shout. Chapter 203, What is Victory? Way of the Fool prevented Sofia from falling off of the platform as she was blown away from the god. She quickly stabilized herself with her wings. She took no damage, but it gave the god the space it needed to heal much faster. The things she had taken out of her storage had been pushed to the opposite end of the platform by the shout. They had been sent far, but were still on the platform because they went in a direction where the edge was further away. With no mana, she couldn't identify the items she had just stolen, not that it mattered. These were a god's items. Sofia wore the crown and readied the sword. The effects of the crown were immediately obvious. In her demon form, Sofia had incredible control over her body and strength, and the crown had instantly bolstered that. That means he's also gotten weaker. That was quite timely, because with no runes left, Sofia was internally debating whether she should give up now and not risk a real death. But this could make a difference. She was stronger, and the god was weaker. The ghostly orchestra had been stifled by the attacks and the roars, but it now started playing again. Their music took darker tones as it accompanied the god's transformation. The orc's body twisted and turned, inflating like it was about to burst. It no longer looked like anything coherent, and it got weirder by the second as it absorbed more and more mana. Sofia flew to the thing as fast as she could. She struck Victory using his own sword, leaving a big open wound in the twisting abomination. She turned around only to see the hole carved by the sword be filled by a large, soulless eye. Since the transforming god wasn't hitting back, she landed and unleashed a storm of sword strikes, cutting off as much matter from the thing as she could. It was like trying to cut an infinitely growing bush. No matter how much dead twisted flesh piled up around her, the flesh cocoon the god had become didn't stop expanding, and every wound turned into yet another unblinking eye. I hate gods. Whoever labeled the recessed plane as hell got it all wrong. She cut and cut again, trying to prevent Victory from becoming whatever it tried to become. She clearly got the feeling that what she was doing was working, even if only a little. The sword broke. Sofia cursed. She did not want to touch whatever that thing was. Her instincts told her it was dangerous. She flew back. The maximum time for her transformation was 5 minutes, the fight needed to end fast. The god's form imploded, it collapsed inwards all at once, giving birth to an impossibly thin but tall humanoid figure covered in a myriad of small eyes constantly shrinking and replaced by new ones. The thing raised an arm, it extended and bent around to reach Sofia like a flying snake. Without any idea what she could even do, or if it was safe to let this thing touch her by striking back, she evaded. She found that this was not unlike evading the Alphagiad's roots. This eye tentacle was much faster than the Alphagiad's roots had been in the first trial, but there was only one, and she could fly. Because things could never be simple, the god raised his other arm. After a few seconds, one of the tentacles grabbed Sofia's left wing. She saw in horror the eyes spread along her wing's bones. She broke the wing off. No touching, then. Now with only one wing, Sofia had to run around the platform to avoid the repeated grabs of the long eye tentacles, while the thin main body of the god did not move from its spot. What can I even do? I have no mana, no ranged attacks, no weapons. I think this is my loss. The mithril dagger is in the pile of stuff I took out, but I do not think it will help. How is this victory? It's more like a walking curse. The god was now like a beacon shining brightly in Sofia's mana senses. It kept sucking and burning the mana from all around. Even if Sofia still had both her wings, she probably wouldn't be able to fly anyway. It seemed that the god's current nightmarish form was very expensive to maintain, and that gave Sofia an idea. If I cannot defeat Victory. Sofia ran. Unexpectedly, the eye tentacles were a bit easier to evade while on the ground, because they could come from fewer directions. She first tried to damage the platform with her tail, only to realize this was pointless. The platform had survived the god's blows without suffering as much as a scratch. What could her tail do? Instead, she stabbed her own back with the bony spikes of her tail, and left traces on the platform ground with her blood, using her tail as a brush. The process was tedious and exhausting because of the eye tentacles, but at least they seemed oblivious to what was going on. Thrice, the eye tentacles caught Sofia in a bad spot. First she sacrificed her other wing to block before breaking it. Her left arm was next. She tore it off to stop the eyes already growing on it from reaching the rest of her body. Then she had to block with her right arm, and had to cut it off with her tail, slowing her painting even more. Sofia kept running around the platform, leaving very deliberate blood trails behind. Her health and stamina had taken a hit, but the most worrying part was the 20 seconds timer left of her transformation. The eye tentacles were unrelenting, but thankfully, there were still only 2 of them, and the slender form of the god was immobile otherwise, busy consuming mana currents in droves. Finally done, Sofia evaded the tentacles one last time. She had them attack in one direction and rushed in the other. The next second, she used sprint to its full potential and beelined for her pile of stuff that was to the far end of the platform. She made it in time, grabbed a heavy rucksack with her tail and threw it behind her without even looking. The eye tentacles threw themselves on the projectile. The bag was mercilessly pierced and covered in staring eyes while the bag's contents rained down on the ground. Gold coins. That was Sofia's final act, her transformation ending in exactly 1 second, it would leave her manaless and powerless to defend herself in any way, too weak to even walk. She threw one last look at the eye monster that Victory had become and jumped off of the tower. You wanted mana, Victory? Have a taste of the generosity of Sun. The ritual Sofia had drawn in blood activated, fueled by the gold sacrifice. To the nightmarishly mutated Victory who had been siphoning ambient mana at a speed so fast it could barely keep up with his spending, the 200% increase in mana regeneration really meant that he would now be absorbing much more. Sofia knew exactly how the ritual worked. She had wondered if there was any way to speed up the absorption of ambient mana in the past, and it turned out the sun's ritual was the way. The 20% regeneration increase without sunlight worked anywhere. The 200% with sunlight, however, helped draw mana from the environment. It wouldn't help if there was no more mana around. I would have liked to see what happens next, but staying up there was too dangerous. But technically, I didn't give up and haven't lost yet, so. As she fell, Sofia saw that more eye tentacles had sprouted from the sides of the tower. She almost panicked but realized they seemed inert. Sofia steered her fall the best she could while her demonification ended and she returned to her human body. She needed to avoid touching the eye tentacles, even if they weren't moving, and she was aiming for something on the ground below. Ready to catch me? She wasn't dumb enough to jump to her death. The High Priest's control magic worked by slowing down a target. She could feel his location and the Templars at the foot of the tower. The fall was agonizingly long, and away from the top of the tower, the mana density at such an altitude was low enough to be extremely unpleasant. There wasn't much air either, and the temperatures were very cold, especially since Sofia had no more clothes, but VPPV's passives helped to mitigate all of that. Finally, she reached the bottom of the tower, with no arms, about a tenth of her health left, even less stamina, no mana, and only a golden crown to show for it. The High Priest skeleton slowed her fall to a crawl and instantly showered her in healing spells, and the Templars caught her, one of them even bringing a large woolen cape it had gotten from who knows where to cover her with. Sofia could only wait. She tried to hide in a corner for the time being. She really didn't know what to do. I couldn't do it. This difficulty is ridiculous. I don't think anyone at level 199 can do it. We're talking about defeating a god here. Well, a level 199 incarnation of a god, but still. Also the scepter is still up there in my right hand, and Afinareth's glove too, and my 2 rings. I lost all my bones. Alpha Ogre Perith is dead, most of my valuables are still on the ground up there. My orichalcum armor is utterly destroyed and so is the orichalcum egg. What a complete loss. Defeat, what a fitting floor name. Sofia was replaying the fight in her head, trying to see what she did wrong, what could have gone better, trying to understand what she could have done. Whether or not there was a way. She felt that her fight couldn't have gone much better. If anything, she could have taken Perith out the second she came out of the stairs to hopefully have Sanctified Grounds activate a bit earlier. But she knew it wouldn't have helped after the god's transformation. What's done is done. I'll do better next time. I might still be first place even, wouldn't be too bad. The rewards from 99 floors are sure to be good. Also I have the crown. So it's not a complete loss. The way Victory spoke about it made it look like it was meant to be the reward, so I just kinda took it. It's just a disappointing ending. I'll identify the crown when I have mana. I know what it does though. It gives strength. I could feel that clearly. Sofia was petrified by the sound of a new system notification. She dreaded looking at it. Objectives completed. The second trial has ended. Congratulations on rank 1. You will be contacted by an administrator or high operator shortly. Please wait. Did I win? I can't believe it either, but as far as the spire is concerned. You did, Sen answered as he seamlessly appeared next to Sofia as if he had always been there. You sure did. Ah. Where do we even start? Obviously the incarnation of Victory is still alive, but you're a headache from start to finish, Miss Afinareth. A massive one. But I'm glad to have been your examiner. I will teleport you back to the top and explain things in detail. Ready? Chapter 204, Crowned. Sofia and her skeletons appeared back on floor 100. She was fully healed and now dressed in a white toga similar to Sen's, with only her mana still empty. He dressed me up? Well, I'll take that over the itchy cape. She looked around. Most of her possessions were still on the ground everywhere. There had been more gold than needed in the sack she threw, so there were also a lot of gold coins spread around. Victory was nowhere to be seen. Sofia threw a look at Sen, who gave a sign to wait, but also teleported all of Sofia's stuff as well as her lost limbs back to her before he disappeared, leaving her standing in front of the junk pile. So I get my things back. Good, because if not, I don't know, I can't imagine Sen would leave me without my things, especially since he knows my name. But I have no mana, so I can't store anything. Sofia picked up her torn demonic arm, no longer covered in ice. She grabbed her rings and glove back, and the scepter came back by itself. The orichalcum is still all there, but in pieces. Well, that's that for my possessions. I recovered the Saintess sash too, guess it fell off during the battle. The bracelet and headband should still be in the storage ring. Sofia was trying to distract herself from the burning questions that only Sen or Victory could answer. For now she was alone atop the tower, so she tried not to think about them too much. After a few minutes, both Sen and the tall orc in burlap shorts appeared near the center of the platform. The orc seemed very happy. Seriously, how did I win? The duo approached and Victory was first to talk. Rejoice, champion. I will give it to you, this valiant victory, he said, nodding to himself. Thank you. But how did I win? Was the sun ritual that effective? I did not expect much from it. It was Sen who stepped up to answer. Let me explain, first what your ritual did, and then the objectives required to pass floor 100. He teleported Sofia's pile of stuff to the side and a white table appeared in its place along with 3 chairs. After everyone sat down, he continued, after you damaged the incarnation of Victory enough, and because you stole his vessel's divine essence, he was left with no choice but to use some of his godly powers to keep fighting. But, as you have seen, forcefully linking the god's plane and the physical plane as he did is very dangerous and mana intensive. Your ritual did what you expected. By enhancing Victory's mana regeneration, it dried out the mana of the arena faster than the spire could refill it. Like a flame without fuel, Victory's new form burned out, and while I will not expand on details, it was good that you jumped off. If not, you would have surely died in the process. To give you an idea, think apostle mutation. So there was more to come after the ice. Also I stole the essence. When? Was it hidden in the sword or something? Victory scratched his head, visibly uncomfortable. As I said, I'm not going to expand too much, do your own research, Sen answered with a smirk. Too much to go through right now already. Tell me how I won, then, because it sure didn't feel much like a victory. Did it have anything to do with the crown? Indeed. See, the objective for this floor is as follows: achieve a state of mutual valiant victory. To get there, a few things need to happen. First of all, Victory must acknowledge you as a worthy opponent through battle. Then, you need to get and wear the crown. And lastly, you need to escape with it, and without using the emergency exit command from the trial. With all these conditions together, it allows for the perfect scenario where everybody wins. Victory has won in battle because you fled in front of his overwhelming might. You have won the crown because you got away with it after winning it in a fair fight. And to be clear, you wouldn't have been able to escape without your ritual doing its thing. Victory's half-godly form was much more than the bit you saw sticking out from the top of the tower. But the chain reaction the ritual started paralyzed the entire entity. The other eye-covered limbs. I saw them while I was falling out. But, why not use them all to catch me at the top then? Mana density constraints. Sofia almost asked why she couldn't escape by flying up but remembered there was no mana above. Instead she asked, could I have teleported out some other way? The godly eyes prevent teleportation. Oh, Sofia then turned to Victory, do you need your essence back? I have no idea how that works exactly, but I would like to keep it if possible. Keep it. You need it to use the crown, it is now yours, Victory assured with a neutral expression. Yet scripture wants to kill me to take his back. Thank you, I will use it well. I have no doubts. Now, let me share the true spoils of Victory, champion. The orc violently pierced his chest with his right fist. Blood splashed out, stopped by an invisible screen. Sen was likely the source of. Victory's hand thrashed around inside his chest, as if he was searching for something, and finally, he took his hand out, the wound closing back almost instantly. He held his closed and bloodied fist over the table, and slowly opened it, 9 gems pouring out of it and bouncing on the table. The sight was a bit disturbing, but Sofia had done worse to herself, so she wasn't one to speak now. She looked at the colorful gems but without identify they were all just rocks full of mana. Victory spoke up again. These are the jewels left by this place's creators. They entrusted them to me. As someone who has overcome the hidden challenge of the 100th floor, you may now choose 3 of them to decorate your crown. Sofia took off the golden crown. Looking at it closer, it did have 3 empty slots to fit in gems. I suppose it's not for aesthetics. How do I choose though? Oh, right, you still have no mana. Sen exclaimed as he saw Sofia examine the crown. Let me identify everything for you, ask me if you have any questions. Saintesmancer's Golden Crown of Victory. Gain a cumulative strength buff from your every valiant victories. Upon losing against a valiant victory target, lose related bonus. This is only active while you wear the crown. Lesser victories. Siren Queen plus 2%. ZHNGLU plus 2%. Valiant victories. Ignatius Everbright plus 5%. Mutated Evranarium line plus 5%. Image of Orvad Moria Ovohen plus 5%. Glorious victories. Incarnation of Victory plus 15%. Current total strength bonus, 34%. Item level, 199. Grade, Flawless. Restriction, wearer must be Sofia Afinareth. Soulbound. System item. Valiant victories. What makes them count and what determines the category? Sen instantly answered as if he had been anticipating the question, it's all up to the grinning orc over there, something about grandiose battles. I see. What about it being a system item then? Your ownership of it and its continued existence is monitored and ensured by the system, simple as that. Also prevents identification and helps it stick to your head, among other things. It's all positive to you. If you're alright with the crown, let's proceed with the jewels. Remember, you can only have 3, no changing your mind later, so pick well. The amount of information I'm allowed to give for those is different, so you can ask questions but I do not promise I will answer. Fine with me. What are they going to be? More things related to victory. The 9 gemstones were all cut to the same shape and size, brimming with mana. They were obviously quite special. One of them in particular stood out to Sofia. It had the same red hues as her storage ring, Rubetu's tail biter. Sen gave some more details before showing the gems details. These are all passive effects, unless they pertain directly to skills. They will cost no mana to maintain, but you must wear the crown for most of them to be in effect. Also, and this is a detail to you, but like the relics from the 99th floor, the gems you pick are unique and won't be offered again if someone else makes it here. The admins had estimated it would take 5,000 years for the first person to have these, so you're a bit early. Anyway. Nigradu, when worn on the Crown of Victory, provides the special skill Spell Decay. Grade, Legendary. Albedo, when worn on the Crown of Victory, provides a random skill with an immunity effect. Grade, Legendary. Citronitas, when worn on the Crown of Victory, provides 3 classless skill slots. Grade, Legendary. Rubetu, when worn on the Crown of Victory, provides 10% mana regeneration speed. Grade, Legendary. Emerald Cipher, when worn on the Crown of Victory, provides knowledge of all system-registered languages. Grade, Legendary. Adamian Core, when worn on the Crown of Victory, provides doubled health and health recovery. Grade, Legendary. Diamond Prism, when worn on the Crown of Victory, provides doubled filter upgrade stats. Grade, Legendary. Chaos Stone, when worn on the Crown of Victory, provides a random special skill of extreme power. Grade, Legendary. Mithrium Glass, when worn on the Crown of Victory, provides a temporary mana shield worth 33% of spent mana. Grade, Legendary. This is going to be tough. Be at ease, champion, there is no wrong choice. Chapter 205, First Come. Sofia contemplated her options without asking anything for a bit. Well, before I even know all the details, 2 of them seem strong enough that I would pick them anyway. Now it's all about choosing the third one. Unless my instincts are wrong. What do you have in mind? Sen asked. Aren't you reading my thoughts? Just like I wouldn't read Dragon Mask's thoughts, it feels like a lack of respect to casually read the mind of someone who ranked higher than I did, doesn't it? That's... Yeah, I could see that. The trio sat in silence, the calm of the platform only disturbed by Sofia's tapping fingernails on the table. What I am thinking so far is that I should take the Diamond Prism and the Citronitas gems. Doubling the filter stats is the craziest effect out of the bunch by a wide margin in my opinion, and 3 classless slots is an enormous reward considering how strong each classless skill has the potential to be, just look at Sanctity. Sen nodded at Sofia's explanation, let me give you the details on the Diamond Prism. I personally agree that you should take it, especially considering you get the VIP Saint privileges to allocate those stats yourself. How it works exactly is a bit different than you might think, though. It doesn't actually double all the filter stats, your stats from the first trial will remain as they are now. But, you would get doubled points to allocate from now on, and those actually stay even if you took off the crown for whatever reason. Does the doubled health one work the same way? To an extent, yes. There's a bit of cheating on the system's part with this one, but the end result is almost the same. But say you get a new skill which gives 10% health, you would still lose the bonus 10% from the crown if you take it off, while doubled health from levels and filters will stay even without the crown. And the doubled regeneration part is linked to wearing the crown too. I get it. So far my choice hasn't changed, but I still need to know more about the other gems. Can you explain what spell decay does? The special skill from Nigredo will be usable as long as you wear the crown, it's an utility and defensive skill. That would be all I am allowed to say about this one, sorry. Don't worry about it. Albedo and Chaos Stone are the same, I suppose. Yes. Albedo gives a random immunity, think Alitha's complete heat immunity. Chaos Stone is a bit special, even I do not know what you could get, it is completely random, but you can expect it to be at least as strong as the angelic lightning you've been throwing around. I am not so sure I need another skill for mass destruction. I think these 3 skill-giving gems aren't worth the risk. Though spell decay does really make me imagine a strong defensive skill like something to dispel any magic maybe, but in the end I can only know for sure by taking it. And is now really the time to take a gamble? Sofia returned to looking at the Adamian core and the Diamond Prism, pointing at them she asked Sen, would my health quadruple if I took these 2 together? It should, Sen confirmed while he was busy adjusting his toga, looking a bit uncomfortable with the question. 4 times is a lot. But there's also the shield from the Mithrium glass. These are about the same, are they not? For someone with a lot of mana like me, the shield might even be better. Sofia felt that the choice shouldn't be too hard, but having the stoic god of victory observing her every move was actually unnerving. Simple incarnation or not, a god was a god. She could gloss over that fact while fighting him, but the end result was the same. To think that 2 years ago she was an unremarkable orphan and now she was there, casually sitting at a god's table, it didn't feel real. Then she remembered why she needed to get so strong so fast in the first place, and that kind of made that whole line of thought irrelevant. I have to thank Scripture for allowing me to get this far, I'll pay him back in kind. I have to remind myself that I am no longer the powerless orphan I once was. Sofia turned her thoughts to the last 2 gems she hadn't asked about. One was Rubedu and its at first glance underwhelming 10% mana regeneration, the other was the Emerald Cipher with its ability to understand every system-registered language. That begged the question, what is a system-registered language? That must have been among the questions Sen had anticipated, he answered like he was reading a script, the system-registered languages are all languages that have been or are used by system users. This includes things like Elvish, Ancient Human, and Avian, to cite a few, and of course, Draconic. With the power of the gem, you would be able to understand, read, and speak them as you would the common language. As long as you wear the crown. Would I be able to read unknown ritual runes? No, most of the time ritual runes do not actually mean anything, they are, for the most part, exactly what they look like, mana pathways, so the gem would not let you read their effects. So the only real reason to take this one is as a shortcut to understand Draconic, which I will need to learn for the system change. As far as I know, every language can be learned with the right book and a bit of guidance. I feel like the logical choices would be either the mana regeneration or the mana shield. Both would be very useful and synergize well with my stat distribution focused on maximizing mana. Say, Sen, mana regeneration doubles after every trial, correct? It does, up to level 500. Would you say an extra 10% is worth it? I know it's a lot, but still, considering the other options. How often have you used the sun ritual during this trial, Sofia? Fair point. I feel like I should look at what it means in real numbers. It's twice what I get from the storage ring, and half what I get from the ritual without sunlight. Currently, that would be about 4 mana points a second. After the filter, accounting for the bonus stats, it will probably be around 10 mana per second just from wearing the crown. It's a bit of a guesswork calculation, but that would be about an extra full mana recharge every 4 hours, I think. So 6 times my entire mana pool per day. It does feel a lot stronger when I look at it like that. I already knew, but 10% is actually a lot. And I need every bit of it if I want to be able to prime the scepter anytime soon, or go back to Zangdar's castle. It's just, not very exciting. The more Sofia thought about it, the more convinced she was that she would regret not taking the mana regeneration later if she skipped it now. But she couldn't help but eye the more uncertain effects she had dismissed earlier, like Nigredu's spell decay. Could I have Master Combreeze's opinion? She would have asked for Victory's opinion, but the god had been silent this whole time, so she felt like he would have already spoken if there was anything he was willing to share. He's currently busy managing the trial while I deal with you, but I can quickly go ask him if you want. My personal opinion is the same as Victory. All choices are correct, it's up to you. I would appreciate it if you could ask him. Yes. I'll be right back, the seraph said before disappearing. That was when Victory decided to speak. Too much thinking, champion. You already know the answer. I know, I cannot help but overthink when I remember where I am headed. Victory closed his eyes, he seemed to be the one lost in thought after that. Before Sen could come back, he calmly shared some of his wisdom. Scripture used you and sorrow to enter this plane. For us to come here, the price is great, and he bypassed that. Me and my ilk cannot help you. But now, he will be stuck in this physical plane of yours for a long time. It is up to you now, champion. Victory opened his eyes, his intense gaze locking with Sofia's. Are you stuck with Scripture? Or is Scripture stuck with you? Sen reappeared on his chair, and Victory returned to his neutral self, as if nothing happened. So, Old Breeze congratulates you on your unbelievable win, says he invites you to come drink with him at his dojo when he retires from the trial, and so on and so forth. His opinion on the gems was this: you know better, student. You succeeded where I failed, trust in your own judgment. Sofia nodded with a weak smile. This answer was pretty much what she expected from the old elf, but it felt nice knowing that so many strong people all thought her own opinion mattered more than theirs. Thank you for telling me, and thank him for me when you can. Sure. Made your choice. Yes. Double filter stats, 3 classless slots, 10% mana regeneration. I'll take the Diamond Prism, Citronitas, and Rubedu Dot. Victory spoke up again. Champion Sofia, is your choice final? Yes. Then so be it. Take your prize, and be proud of your accomplishments. You may now, and forever, be known as the first mortal to have equaled Victory itself. The 6 gems Sofia hadn't picked shot toward Victory and disappeared inside of his torso, leaving only the clear, the red, and the yellow gem behind. Chapter 206, Level 200. After the first heavy decision, the trio spent some time having a more casual conversation on the trial and Victory. For example, Sofia learned that he took the appearance of an orc because the orcs were the ones to worship Victory the most, and so he felt that it was natural to appear as one of them. She also learned that a few other gods were currently able to roam the lands, Sun being the most prominent example. The 2 old monsters gave Sofia tips and advice worth their weight in gold, and they had her talk about her encounters with the deep in exchange. Some things were mysterious even to gods, it seemed. Then came farewells, and Sen took Sofia to his private quarters within the spire, a luxurious suite not even kings would dare dream of, where she found his real physical body sleeping on an oversized bed. The mana body he had been until now crumbled and his real self woke up. Sofia hoped to maybe see his level through Identify, but even his real body only showed Seraph. Follow me, Sen told her, pointing at a trapdoor in a corner. We can't teleport where we're heading. Where, exactly, are we going? The lower core of the spire. I need you to be there to process your level up and the draconic system bridging. Alright. Where do the others level up? Are they all done too? Not everyone's out yet. No, the vampire is still going, she's climbing better than expected. Nice, good job, Astelia. Sofia followed Sen, climbing down the ladder in the narrow tube under the trapdoor. It was impossible to see the bottom. Can I know everyone's ranking? You will have to ask them in person, and to answer your previous question, they get personal rooms to go through the leveling process. Not unlike the safe house you have visited, except within the trial grounds. I'm sorry for asking so many questions, Senior. Your curiosity is only natural. I'm thousands of years older and I'm still like that too. You haven't been asking many things, though. I already know a lot. I do have questions, but these are not things you need to hear right now. The impossibly long ladder finally ended, and Sen guided Sofia through multiple noisy rooms filled with steel and mana contraptions that she could not even begin to understand, until they reached some kind of altar. It looked like a steel bed or table, with a large hole in the ceiling over it. Though Sofia could see through the darkness, the hole was still dark somehow. Lay down there, try to be straight and with your head against the table. The situation was certainly weird and a bit scary, but Sofia followed the instructions, even if the wings made lying on her back uncomfortable. I'll be hooking you to the draconic system first. You won't understand the system messages, so don't worry about them. I'll translate what's needed directly to your scribe later. Sofia patiently waited. She anticipated maybe something big or painful to happen, and was surprised that there was nothing of the sort, just a few absolutely unreadable system messages flashing by and nothing else. And that's it for the hard part of my job. Now it's your hard part, ready for the level up. Do I not get the full rundown of rewards first? Because I'm directly handling it, no, I'll leave you with that on your own later. Some of the rewards are bonus stats for the level up, but I'm already taking that into account. Great, thank you. It's going to hurt, right? It shouldn't, but considering the amount of stats you are getting, it's possible that it could. What's going to happen is essentially that the system is going to give you the absolute maximum amount of stats your soul can handle right now. Honestly, I'm glad that you didn't pick both the Diamond Prism and a Damian Core, because that would have caused some serious issues on my end. And I would also ask that you level up a bit before getting any more stats in any way, like at least 10 levels, to be safe. Though picking the specialization right away should be fine. Probably. Noted. The absolute maximum I can handle. Alright, I won't be able to speak while I manage the level up, so have fun. Initiating level up past filter 3, please do your best to stay still. As an affiliated saint, you have access to the customizable upgrade subsystem. You may not divulge any information about this subsystem or its existence. Calculating optimal path. No class evolution available. Race evolution already ongoing. Trial evaluation for upgrade potential, max. Your allocated upgrade score is 90,000 stat points. Ranking reward upgrade score bonus 30,000 stat points. Due to Diamond Prism, 200% multiplier is applied. Total upgrade score 240000 stat points. You may now allocate your points. Sofia's first shock came from the race evolution ongoing message, but it was quickly superseded by the absurd numbers following that. She had to read the messages twice to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. 240,000. 240,000. Yes, so this thing about a gap between later filters. I feel like I understand much better now. I already had a taste of it when the Master's health showed 20 millions, but I still thought it could have been special to him. This is making me think that it's probably just the norm. And 30,000 of those are part of the reward for the 100 floors. Or rather, 150,000, if we count the effects of the crown. That's like more than tripling my current stats. Right now, if we add it all up, I have less than 109,000, and that's only so high because of my inflated mana pool. Crazy. Well, at least I don't have to think too much about it. I'll go with Velour's advice on this one. I do not think she would mislead me about something so trivial to her, and it feels about right. So with my current stats being this. Health, 10,995/10,995. Stamina, 3,662/3,662. Mana, 94,000/94,000. I give up on trying to make it clean. The first level up will mess it up anyway. Health, 10,995/10,995 plus 9,000. Stamina, 3,662/3,662 plus 16,400. Mana, 94,000/94,000 plus 214,600. Something like this is what Velour recommends. 20,000 health and stamina, everything else into mana. It feels a bit risky to leave my health so low when I have so many points to distribute. But I have the false immortality runes, and the demon form, and Perith. This should be alright, no need to spend hours on this. I'm more curious about the race evolution message, but I guess that is probably the result of venerable physique of the primeval void? After all, it has been altering my body in pretty significant ways already, and it looks like it will continue doing so. Allocation complete, closing subsystem. Sofia felt mana start to accumulate in the giant hole she was laying under, a frightening amount. This was much more mana than even the angel had used to attack the giant Alphagiad. It was enough to blind her mana senses completely, and all at once, the mana crashed down on her. I'm so glad I got rid of pristine essence. Sofia fainted. Sofia woke up in an unknown room, alone. The bed was comfortable but her body was sore and her mind was fuzzy. You gained a level. Congratulations, your Saintess class reached level 200, plus 1 passive skill slot. Congratulations on conquering floor 70. Plus 1 active skill slot. Congratulations on conquering floor 80. Plus 1 passive skill slot. New active skills are available. New passive skills are available. Congratulations, you have triumphed over the third filter. You may now gain experience up to level 249. Additional rewards have been delivered, detail is as follow. Completion reward, level up *1. Ranking Spire rewards breakdown. Specific statistics have been replaced by equivalent upgrade score. Floor 1 to 20, second filter gachapon box. Floor 21 to 39, upgrade score plus 50. Floor 40, class skill level up point, 200, *1. Floor 41 to 49, upgrade score plus 100. Floor 50, class skill level up point, 200, *1. Floor 51 to 59, upgrade score plus 200. Floor 60, class skill level up point, 200, *1. Floor 61 to 69, upgrade score plus 300. Floor 70, active skill slot plus 1. Floor 71 to 79, upgrade score plus 400. Floor 80, passive skill slot plus 1. Floor 81 to 89, upgrade score plus 500. Floor 90, skill fusion ticket *1. Floor 91 to 94, upgrade score plus 1125. Floor 95, upgrade score plus 11050. Floor 96, random free specialization point, skill specialization point, classless, *1. Floor 97, the dark orb. Floor 98, black belt. Floor 99, custom, ringed arms of Tsar. Floor 100, custom, golden crown of victory diamond prism citronitas rubedu. This is all I have time for right now, your stuff is on the table, take your time to get everything sorted out. Call for me when you step out, I have one last thing I need to show you Sen. This serif is too nice. Along with the messages, there were also a few more system messages written in an unreadable cursive script which Sofia immediately understood was draconic. So I'm stuck with this now. Hey, at least all Mr. Scribe should be still able to handle most things so I won't have to worry about that too much. Sofia looked at the pile of things on the low table at the center of the small room, the 20 gachapon boxes being the thing that took the most space, but there was also some food, a black ball, an old heavy-looking book, and random hygiene products like a brush and a towel, which were probably provided to everyone for the post-level up cleanup. I'm already clean though, no disgusting smelling black goop, I guess Sen took care of it. I'm not unhappy to have fainted this time, if it hurt at least I didn't feel it. These are a lot of rewards. And I also have new skills. Where do I even start? Chapter 207, Race. I think what I'm most curious about is this, let's see. Skill Fusion Ticket. This ticket allows you to fuse any two skills of the same skill category. If no satisfying result is produced, the fusing will not happen and you may try again with another combination. A fused skill is usually not the exact sum of its parts. Item level, -1. Grade, virtual. So I can combine two skills and there's a probability that effects will be gained or lost is what that means. There's a combination that I really want already, but it might be kind of dangerous. Though, they are both relatively simple skills so perhaps. Yet I don't think it would go wrong, they could go well together and if any of their current properties disappear the skill would become worthless so I don't think it would be a satisfying result. I could also keep it for later since I have more skills to make. But then, depending on what the result of this is, I may not want to make the same skills later. There's really no good order to this. I might as well just try, I think. Skill Fusion Ticket, 1, is being used to combine Armor of Bones and Holy Wings of Undeath, are you sure? It really works despite the wings being a locked skill then. I think I really want this, yet. The main thing I hope is that the wings become a part of the armor and profit from the fast regeneration. My wings are too vulnerable as is, and they're important for my mobility. I might even get Ziray's body enhancement tattoo. I really understand why the avians all used it. I would have been able to outspeed Victory's eye tentacles much easier, maybe even the target-seeking sword. Skill fusion ticket has been used. The next system message was in Draconic. Sofia couldn't read it, but since both her skills disappeared, it must have meant the fusion worked. Sofia's bone wings fell, only the bone directly taking root in her body was still there, and she couldn't feel her wings any longer. The sensation was disquieting. Sofia waited for the result with bated breath. In these short instant, she wondered 1,000 times if she had been too impatient again, if using this so soon was a mistake. But she was actually pretty confident that she knew what she was doing, just that she could never get rid of the doubt. The fear of missing out on something better. Then a new passive skill came along with yet another unreadable system message. Sofia's wings didn't regrow, which had her a bit worried. Exalted exoskeleton, praised be the Saintess external body of bones, for it is as glorious as it is eternal. It is all yours, use it how you see fit. Stored bones, 0/1000000 kg. Sofia almost rolled her eyes at the useless description that resembled the wing's original one. The only notable change was the 2 additional zeros in the maximum capacity of the bone storage. Sofia activated the skill and nothing happened, which freaked her out a bit, only to remember that the storage was empty. She could still cut off the stump of her wings and heal it back to refill it, but that would be too slow, so she just transferred one of the stone ogre bodies she kept in her storage ring to her skills storage. She still had 3 more anyway. She activated the skill again. Much faster than usual, her body was covered in a bright white armor of bones, and the wings were included. Immediately, she noticed 2 things. First of all, this new fused armor was much more flexible in its usage. Without even using the control from Bone Dominus, she could retract all OR parts of it at will and alter the way it looked. But the holy golden glow that usually only covered her deployed wings was now a part of the armor, like an additional layer of protection. But this only activated when she was wearing the complete armor with her helmet closed. Sofia quickly made a small bone ring and gave it the blessing from Bone Dominus, then she deactivated the armor, leaving only the wings active, and emptied her bone storage. She now looked exactly like she usually did. Except the small ring's blessing started healing the missing armor, which it usually didn't do. Just like when I used to heal my missing wings with it or heal undead to fill the bone storage. So I still have infinite bones if I just take the time. So, the armor is sturdier thanks to the added holy layer. I can now retract my wings with it if I want. It's easier to reshape the armor, the storage space is larger. And it still has all the properties it used to have. Oh, I haven't checked the repair speed. After some quick testing, it was still the same improved speed she had gotten from altering armor of bones herself with mana manipulation. Except it now also extends to the wings. It's nothing but improvements and it freed a skill slot. This is such a great start. Sofia had also already had her hands on the rewards from floors 98, 99, and 100, that only left the reward from floor 97 to check out, the Dark Orb. It was the exact same orb that was actually the key of that floor, the one that hid away in the void. Sofia walked up to the table to inspect it. The Dark Orb is a level 199 golem with the following skills. Invisibility, Flight, Mana Shield, Heal, Mana Arrows, Skull Crusher, Evasion. It can be gifted as a guardian and will protect its new owner against attacks. Will not help the owner if they are the ones initiating the fight, even indirectly. May those who cannot protect themselves be protected. Item level, 199. Grade, Precious. Restrictions, will not protect owners over level 99, requires ambient mana to function. That's a strange reward for such a high floor, something you cannot even use. But I see the utility. Gifting a level 199 autonomous guardian to someone is quite something. I would give that to Chino if I knew where she is. Well, that is nice to have, I guess. Now, everything else I already know of. The specialization point will be nice, but I fear I might have to start learning Draconic for it. I also need to open the gachapon boxes and then get to the best part. The new skills. Let's have a look at my whole status page first, I guess. A few skills leveled up during the fight with Victory, but I didn't really pay much attention. Name, Sofia Afinareth. Age, 21. Class, Saintess. Level, 200. Health, 20000/20000. Stamina, 20067/20067. Mana, 319/100/319/100. Main specialization, Eclipse Skeleton. Alteration chance, 0%. Secondary specialization, Inactive. Active skills, 6/8. Spine of the Black Sun, level 200. Heal Undead, level 71. Summon Blood, level 200. Maiden Banshee, level 200, LV.200. Graveyard of the Righteous, level 200. False Immortality, level 3. Passive skills, 5/8. Blessing of the Deep, 2/4. Valkyria's Rehofen of Sorrow. Exalted Exoskeleton. Venerable Physique of the Primeval Void, Doors of the Light Forging Realm. Bone Dominus, level 2. Classless skills, 6/9. Fast Reading, level 55. Way of the Fool, level 21. Sprint, level 38. Identify, level 2. Sanctity, level 100. Mana Manipulation. Special skills, 1. The Book of Skeletons. Summoned Heroes, 3/4. LV.200 Perith, Dormant Soul. LV.200 Alith. LV.200 Book of Skeletons, Book. Mark of Afinareth. 300,000 mana. Now this is starting to really look like something. The level 199 skills all leveled up as usual, Way of the Fool and Sprint went up during floor 100. Oh, and Heal Undead as well. There's already a line for secondary specialization even though I haven't used the point yet, interesting. And so many free skill slots. Alith got her level 200 too. But... Alith. That used to say Maiden Banshee. Is Alith's new race that Sen made to fix her issues? The Alith race. Sofia couldn't help but giggle at the idea. Alith the Alith. She laughed out loud, come on, Sen, you could have at least tried, ha ha ha. And I also got back the 10,000 mana from her, which is nice. I no longer have any external factor reducing my mana. Also, the stats I get for every level look pitiful now. 5 health, 5 stamina, and 500 mana. That's basically nothing at this point. This is where class evolutions come in, I think. Except I got none. And Orvad was a level 299 stonemason too. Maybe class evolutions mostly happen after level 300? But can I even get one? My class isn't really normal. Also I don't think the Saint class can evolve, right? Many questions. Well, I will open the boxes last, I think. They're just not too important, chances are there won't be anything good coming from them anyway. The specialization is classless. I don't really know what I should do with it. Maybe mana manipulation or sanctity. Let's do the easier part first, class skills. New available skills have been altered by your specialization. 100% probability check. Available active skills. Command, Soul that none can resist. Restore, infuse the target with mana 2. Ritual Skulls of, Error. Penumbra, Error. Sofia stared at the new keywords for a while, wondering what she could possibly do with these. The specialization had done its job, whatever ritual-related saint skill she could have now had a skull in it, and the Necromancer part would have probably been shadow-related, she thought, which had been replaced by Penumbra. She didn't know what Penumbra meant exactly, but she knew it was related to shadows and solar eclipses. The issue was, she couldn't really see what this could do for her. She had used the keyword shadow previously, but that was for a passive skill. Even if I think of Penumbra as meaning shadow, which I think is inaccurate, then what? Restore shadow? Ritual Skulls of Shadow? I don't know. I could try Restore Penumbra and Ritual Skulls of Command maybe? Or go by what the master said, pick Restore Command, which is a safe choice, and then try Ritual Skulls of Penumbra. All the 3-word combinations are really weird this time. I don't want any of them. And of course I can just wait for more keywords. That will be a while though. If we follow the usual order, level 210 is more passives, so I need to go to 220 for new active keywords. But I already have a 20 level debt from using the demon form twice, and I will likely pick up more debt through the specialization. The next active keywords could take forever to come, and all that time, I'll be weaker than I should be because I didn't pick anything. I'll have a look at the new passives first and then decide. Chapter 208, Draconic Influence. Available passive skills. With suffering, all those who touch it except the Necromancer with long-lasting agony. Runic, you are one with the runes of Greater Holy, activate to surround the saint with a Greater Holy aura which Miasma, of weakening miasma. Interesting. Greater Holy is a nice keyword to get, and miasma is not bad too, I think. Wasn't miasma supposed to be the basilisk's airborne poison? That should be pretty strong. These things are the whole reason boats can't go further south than the first trial tower, according to the pirate crew. So what do I do? Already there are many good combinations compared to the active skills. It's going to be hard to choose for the opposite reasons. Well, I've dealt with worse. These are my passive skills right now. Passive skills, 5/8. Blessing of the Deep, 2/4. Valkyria's Rehofen of Sorrow. Exalted Exoskeleton. Venerable Physique of the Primeval Void, Doors of the Light Forging Realm. Bone Dominus, Level 2. I have 3 free slots. I should get more passive keywords at 210 and 230. But unless I get slots from the level 250 trial, if I follow the current pattern, my next passive slot is at 300. That is a while. And before that, I should also get more passive keywords at 250 and 270, while the ones from 290 will be skipped until I complete the level 300 trial as they usually do. In total, I will likely get 8 more keywords before I get a new slot. Of my current passives, I'm never getting rid of any of them, realistically, even if they weren't locked for the most part. What this is all telling me is that I'll soon have too many keywords and not enough slots. This only leaves 2 choices, either I make skills with 3 or more keywords and try to use them all, or I selectively wait and pick the best sounding combinations while allowing myself a lot of freedom of choice. That makes the second option sound better, but it's actually only slowing my growth. I don't know. My only certitude right now is that I can't afford to make 2 passives right now with these 4 words, or I'll be locked out of using the ones I get later. So of all possible combinations, Greater Holy with Suffering could be decent, since it's a combination of 2 keywords, only the effects are more predictable, and for once, the descriptions say a lot. I'm fairly confident that this would be an aura that applies agony. Could be worth taking. Runic Miasma, on the other hand, the skill name itself paints a nice picture, but the descriptions don't match really well. You are one with the runes of weakening miasma. Maybe. But not very inspiring. Runic with Suffering is still a big no. And I guess that leaves Greater Holy Miasma which I could see that working. Holy Aura of Miasma? Of the 3-word combinations, the order of Greater Holy and Runic doesn't seem like it would change the meaning either way, and about the same for the 2 end keywords. So it would really be about whether to pick 2 fronts or 2 backs. Which makes the best sounding choices be Greater Holy Runic Miasma with Suffering, and Greater Holy with Suffering Miasma. I would say Runic Miasma with Suffering doesn't have the same potential the 2 other ones have. Feels like a waste of the Runic keyword. Though, I have to say, Miasma and with Suffering are both parts of skills that apply negative status effects, so they go well together. Greater Holy with Suffering Miasma might just be what I need then, and I keep the Runic keyword for something more appropriate later. But Miasma with Suffering or with Suffering Miasma? Suffering Miasma kind of makes it sound like it's the miasma that does the suffering, no? Let's go for Greater Holy Miasma with Suffering then. I'm counting on you, Sir Scribe. Sofia had a suspicion that maybe sticking Greater Holy and negative status effects together might not result in a strengthened effect like she hoped. But at the same time, maybe it would, and there was precedent with Holy Skeleton and Holy Wings of Undeath not having adverse effects despite the very opposite base words. Either way, she couldn't accept leaving the trial without a single new skill, especially when she had 3 level 200 skill up tickets. You have acquired the passive skill, with Suffering. You have acquired the passive skill, Miasma. You have acquired the passive skill, Greater Holy. The skill appeared all messed up in her status. Oh, looks like the scribe didn't have a ready answer for this one. By reflex, she still tried to access the skill's information which returned 2 small messages in Draconic. That first one I can already tell is the usual error, so if I follow the logic, the other one is something like please wait, if I remember correctly. Sofia decided to take a look at the book on Draconic that Sen had left her to wait for the skill to update. Fast reading was of no help this time. She had to slowly try to understand the principles of the Draconic language. Just understanding the basic principle of their special alphabet took her 3 hours. That was 3 pages. Great. There's what, 800 more? Maybe I should have picked the emerald cipher after all. The skill had been ready for a while, but Sofia was too focused on her studies to notice. She got worried when she saw the skill name written in Draconic but thanked the scribe when the description was actually readable. When activated, the light of your holy spells spreads the Iridian Rot. Upkeep, 10,000 mana per second. Sofia stared at the description for a while. That was the most concise of all her 3 keyword skills yet. No details, no nothing, just an ominous line about rot and a gigantic mana cost. Seriously, that's the same cost as a basic Angel's Bolt. It's not too bad, still. I can keep that going for 30 seconds, which is a lot, all things considered. But this Iridian Rot sounds scary. Which is good? Do I need to worry about hitting myself with it? I don't suppose I can get more details about what this rot is meant to be. Could I at least get a list of exactly which skills this works with, like is the solar light from the spine holy light? Please wait. List of known skills and wild magic capable of producing holy light. Eclipse skeleton. Spine of the black sun. Heal undead. Exalted exoskeleton. Venerable physique of the primeval void. Sanctity. The Book of Skeletons. Sofia was surprised that she actually got what she asked for, and not in Draconic either, which was a relief. So most of my skills. Heal undead and exalted exoskeleton aren't surprising, but everything else. So Perith and the book's summons like the paladins and the priest should be able to apply it. If so, that's incredibly strong. Though, heal undead might be the most efficient way to spread it yet. Heal undead, invokes a pillar of holy healing light. Only heals the undead. Max range and radius of 71 meter, 1 asterisk skill level. Heal the undead for 81, 10 plus skill level, health plus, 5% of the healed undead's maximum health, per second while the light is channeled. The light pilla's upkeep is 100 mana per second plus 1 mana per 2 health points restored. Does not work in restricted spaces. As long as it's not healing anything, it's only 100 mana per second no matter the size. If I get it to level 200 or 249, that's a really big area that showers everything with holy light. I wanted to get rid of it because the mana cost is too high to heal Perith since he had so much health. Just using it for half a second during the fight against Victory almost halved the mana I had left. But now if it can also spread a strong status effect, I might not be getting rid of it quite yet. It's also nice that the spine works, but that's just a footnote at this point. But I don't understand at all how VPPV and Sanctity produce holy light. Either the system messed up or I'm missing some serious details about some of my skills. Probably the second option. Also no Angel's Bolt. So angelic light isn't holy light. I'm not too surprised, but it's interesting to know for sure. Since Sofia understood that angels were affiliated with the system and that holy light meant that it pertained to the gods, it was logical that they were different. Unless the system was some kind of god, but from this, it seemed it wasn't. With one skill category figured out, Sofia spent more time agonizing over what to do with her active skills, but she couldn't decide in the end and opted to wait. Instead, she focused on the classless skills. She had 3 slots to fill, potentially 4 if she dropped sprint again, and a specialization point waiting to be used. Chapter 209, Digging for Gold. So this is my situation. Classless skills, 6/9. Fast reading, level 55. Way of the Fool, level 21. Sprint, level 38. Identify, level 2. Sanctity, level 100. Mana Manipulation. Sanctity is fully leveled, and it might actually be my only specialization option with Mana Manipulation. Because I know there was a proficiency component mentioned last time for Perith's specialization. But then, maybe Way of the Fool might work too, and it would finish leveling it up too, which would be nice considering how slowly it's been rising. Then I always have the option to pick up and train a new classless to specialize in it. Before anything else, Sofia identified the specialization point. Since it already showed a secondary specialization line on her status, she thought this one might work differently. Skill specialization point, classless, this reward for an exceptional trial performance is not to be used lightly. This will be your second specialization. Use it to permanently imprint a known classless skill in your physical body where it will develop as you level up. The chosen specialization will influence future stat growth from regular level UPS. Item level, -1. Grade, Virtual. That answers my question about stat growth. It looks like there's more to it than class evolutions. That changes things a bit. The fact that her choice there would influence her stat growth meant a few things. First of all, she would want one that gave more mana. But also, the more she waited to take it, the more level up stats she wasted. The stat growth distribution will be more about the chosen path and not the actual base skill, I suppose, since that's how the skill influence part of the first specialization worked. So it's really important to not only pick a good path but also one that's likely to give the wanted stats. I'll do that when I'm done picking the other classless. I have 3 slots, but the specialization will free one, and sprint could go if there's something better, but I need to be sure to have a way to be mobile when the wings don't work. Alright, Mr. Scribe. Please show me a list of all the available classless skills. Please wait. Sofia did wait for about 10 seconds before she frowned at how long it was taking and decided to tackle the book on Draconic again. It took more than an hour for the results to come. Lords. Facing Sofia was not a system notification or a list. It was a wall. An unending sea of options. Not only that, some were in Draconic. How am I meant to do anything with this? I really hope Sen didn't count on me coming out of the room anytime soon. It took Sofia an excruciatingly long time to go over all the options. Just progressing enough through the book on Draconic to begin to translate the skills took multiple days. During that lapse of time, she also discovered that she could filter the list by asking things like only show the Saint exclusive classless skills, of which Sanctity was an example. Another standout thing was her comprehension being good enough to have an idea of what her new passive skill's name was. She was still uncertain, but she understood that the overall meaning was something like Forbidden Wind or Banished Breath. It was hard to really tell as the Draconic words had many significations that seemed to change depending on sentence structure and context. After a lot of cutting down the skills she couldn't use, Sofia was left with only a handful of really good ones to try and pick 4 or 5 from. The decision was harder than expected, not because of the abundance of choice but because most of the powerful classless skills were locked skills that she would be stuck with if she picked them. Of the bunch, there were 2 uncertain ones that were in Draconic but seemed to have correct effects if Sofia's translations were somewhat accurate. These 2 were Lifting, create currents easy magic speed 5%, 5 * skill level. Pretentious armor, if will survive external scales sturdy hurting diffuse 10%, 10 * skill level. Sofia's understanding of these was that lifting gave flying speed and pretentious armor spread the damage of enemy attacks through the armor so that it doesn't break as easily. Maybe. If this is what they do, they're worth considering. But it's hard to tell right now. Deciding that it was better to stay away from these gambles for now, she went through her whole curated list of possibilities again. Zealot, deal 25% more and receive 25% less damage when enacting the orders of your god. This one could help against scripture as long as Orator is recognized as a god, which isn't too far-fetched. Still, it's not incredible or very versatile, but it could be good still, especially if I get another deep quest. After all, Blessing of the Deep still says, 2/4. Radiance, healing dealt and received plus 0.5%, 0.5% * skill level. Straightforward, not so useful for heal undead because of how it scales, but the synergy with the blessed constructs of Bone Dominus is nice. With this skill at level 100, they would each heal for 0.75% health per second instead of 0.5%. Dominus is already level 2, if I can get it up to 3 or 4 and start getting as much passive healing, it's going to be a lot. If Perith could have healed faster against Victory, the fight would have been very different. Also should work on potions and healing candies, so that's a plus. Death resistance, when under 5% health, take 99% reduced passive damage. This one, if I understand correctly, means that I can't die from being cursed, standing in fire, bleeding out, being poisoned, all the things like that which would be counted as passive damage. It synergizes very well with the first passive from VPPV, which can leave me at low health like that, but I'm not too sure about this one since the system refuses to give any precision on what passive damage really is. Also, it's locked, which is a bit annoying. Sniper, you are 1% harder to see for every 10 meters between you and the observer. One of the best ones, I think, especially with the precision range of the charged angel bolts. If I fly high enough, it would make me almost invisible to those on the ground, even with the big glowy wings. Sofia's only issue with this skill was the strange name, part of the poker face line of classless skills with names that meant nothing. Meditation. You may now gain skill experience through meditation by intensively envisioning yourself using the skills. This was a bit of a weirder one that Sofia already knew of. It wasn't too bad, allowing to train some skills without the usual mana consumption or other side effects like creating lakes of blood. It was good to have to make the most of the downtime when regenerating mana, but it also kind of felt like a wasted slot in combat. Sculpting. You are 5%, 5* skill level, faster and more precise at sculpting and producing handmade art. Utility to make better objects through bone dominus, should also help at sculpting my wings and armor I think, and at sculpting the enemy's bones if I can touch them. All in all, not bad. Does channeling an angel's bolt count as sculpting it? It's basically giving it form, so it could also be called handmade art if you stretch the definition a bit. And for what it's worth, it probably works with drawing rituals too. Unrelenting. Your movements are 90% less affected by pain and status effects. Basically the health-related variant to Zire's Tireless, and no need to level it up. This one never showed up before, so it must be hard to unlock. Crystallized. Your body will slowly produce mana pearls, growth speed linked to mana regeneration, which can be used as ritual fuel or eaten to provide a temporary 100% bonus to thinking speed. This was maybe the weirder one of the bunch, but its scaling with mana regeneration and the huge thinking speed bonus it could give made it hard to ignore. Where and how will the pearls be produced is the big question. I feel like this should be part of the description. Also, how big do they get? Do they need to be manually harvested? No matter how I think of it, it sounds gross. I can't help but imagine the worst. NIT is locked. Why? Shining. The light created by your skills is 1%, 1* skill level, brighter. Not much to say about this one, I don't think I'll take it. But with my new passive skill, it could be good. That's essentially a range extension, which is why I kept it. It would also make the angel bolts unbearably brighter than they already are, which would make aiming with them quite hard. Alright, not this one. Safekeeping. Objects infused with your mana are sturdier. Again, not much to say, the worth of this depends on the level of sturdiness. Technically my armor and all my skeletons can be treated as objects, and they already have my mana too. So depending on how this applies, this might actually be the strongest choice out of everything I've found. Such an unassuming name for a potentially incredible effect. Evasion. While moving out of the way of attacks or projectiles, gain a temporary bonus of 1%, skill level, movement and reaction speed. It doesn't go quite as high as sprint, but they can compound when I'm on the ground, and it also works while I'm flying. Also, if I take crystallized, and taking Way of the Fool into account, it would start to be a lot of brain power when all stacked together. And being able to quickly process more information in combat is really helpful, not just for dodging but also to strategize and direct the skeletons. So nothing fancy here, but I think it's really good. That leaves 2 more to consider. Chapter 210, Not an Oyster. 1 with Suffering. For each % of health lost during a singular battle, gain a 1% increase to all stats except mana and health until the end of combat, lose 1% for each % of health healed. It's still vague what all stats is, but it includes at least strength, agility, and speed, which all also give stamina on the side. Just doubling that through a fight is big, but what I'm looking at here is the huge loophole this skill has. Lose 1% for each % of health healed. There's this neat thing about the false immortality runes, they are not healing. I've used them enough to know exactly what they do, they restore my body to a previous healthy state. It's not healing. So if I'm correct in my assumptions, I'm not limited to the 99% health lost like everybody else is. I can accumulate this buff to crazy heights, and then use my demon form to destroy everything. The caveat being that I'm not completely certain the false immortality loophole really works, and it's a locked skill. So if I misunderstood anything in how this all functions, I'll be stuck with this lukewarm skill, which most of the time would do nothing instead of being a giant improvement to my demon form. And the last classless skill to consider is the one about divine essences. Quintessential. Improve the range and clarity of your mana senses for each possessed divine essence. Currently the maximum range of Sofia's mana senses was about 2000 meters if there were no obstacles, and of those, the clear information and sight was really only her direct surroundings. Depending on how much this improved, she might even become able to read her enemy's mana movements in combat and anticipate their spells. Or be able to see through everything on a large scale instead of just near her. And since she already had 6 divine essences and would have to get more to evolve VPPV, this felt like perhaps the easiest choice of the whole bunch. I think I actually want to keep Sprint. Comparing it to everything else, the multiplier is just too high to dismiss. So I have 3 spots and a 4th one to come after the specialization. For clarity's sake, Sofia wrote down a simplified version of the skills. Lifting, flight speed, uncertain. Pretentious armor, damage spreading / mitigation, also uncertain. Zealot, deep questing buff. Radiance, healing bonus. Death resistance, insurance against bleeding out, poison, and the likes. Sniper, be very sneaky from afar. Meditation, train skills during downtime without mana. Sculpting, better and faster bone crafting. Unrelenting, resist movement impairments up to a point. Crystallized, produce own mana crystal / thinking speed drugs. Shining, brighter light to spread rot. Safekeeping, mana makes stuff harder to break, skeleton synergy. Evasion, evade easier, thinking speed bonus on top but requires danger. One with suffering, cheating with runes, huge demon synergy. Quintessential, mana side progressive upgrade. And I can only pick 4? I'm glad I took that Citronita's gem now because settling on only one would be a real nightmare. Sofia walked around the room holding her small bone tablet with the skills written on it. First of all, I think the draconic skills can go, I'm not sure of what they do exactly and it doesn't seem that strong anyway. 2 lines disappeared from the bone tablet. Zealot is not bad but too limited in its use, so it can go. Radiance I'm leaving up for now, strengthening the healing from the constructs is very strong. I could also try to alter heal undead until it's less shitty and make it even better with this. Death resistance doesn't do enough, and neither does meditation. Sculpting is nice but the bone armor already repairs itself quite fast and my bone craftsmanship is already not too bad. I can do without these 3. I already have Blessing of the Deep helping against the worst status effects so the value of Unrelenting is diminished a lot, it's another pass. And Shining is too situational. So I'm left with these 7. Radiance, Sniper, Crystallized, Safekeeping, Evasion, One with Suffering, Quintessential. Say, Mr. Scribe. Since you could get me a list of skills which work with Holy Light. Can I know whether a false immortality activation resets the One with Suffering bonus? Despite waiting a bit for an answer, nothing came of that. But Sofia still had more cards to play. Then, please give me a list of known skills and wild magic capable of healing. This is exactly the same syntax he used before except I replaced Holy Light with healing. Please wait. So it was just a matter of what and how I ask exactly. So many moving parts to what the system will and will not do. How much hidden stuff is still to discover. But most of it will be in Draconic now. List of known skills and wild magic capable of applying healing. Eclipse Skeleton. Spine of the Black Sun. Heal Undead. Maiden Banshee. Bone Dominus. The Book of Skeletons. No surprise this time. And the rune is not there, hence it is extremely likely I can accumulate the bonus from One with Suffering to 300% or more by stacking the runes. So it's hard to justify not taking it with such an effect. I think I can forget about Radiance for now, and only reconsider it if and when I manage to upgrade Heal Undead enough. It would clash with One with Suffering anyway, and the book's skeletons don't need healing half the time. As long as it's sunny. And I don't either, because the runes block that. But still, it's likely that I'll end up picking that one later anyway, maybe when Bone Dominus gets to level 3. I still need to get rid of 2 more. Sofia first learned safekeeping to try out the effects firsthand, as advertised it made all things infused with her mana sturdier, even the skeletons. But it turned out the effect was quite underwhelming. Be it the book's skeletons or Perith who she just resummoned from one of the leftover stone ogre bodies, most of their mana actually did not come from her. As such the advantage they gained through this effect was lackluster. She could directly give them more, and that would start to actually make a visible difference when she filled them with tens of thousands of mana points, but then there were better uses of her mana. With this out of the way, it left 5 skills for 4 spots. After some deliberations with herself, she decided against picking Crystallized. The idea of her body producing pearls from who knows where was just too weird. And what if the pearl took a full year to form? Then she would be forever stuck with this lock skill for nothing. It wasn't a risk she was willing to take right now. She had also debated taking the master's recommendation, friendly fire, but it didn't feel as good as any of her current picks. So, after way too much time spent searching, filtering, and agonizing over the thousands of available options, Sofia settled on her 4 new classless skills. Sniper, Evasion, One with Suffering, and Quintessential. She didn't feel any change after taking Sniper and Evasion, but it was a nice surprise that Evasion was already level 32. Taking Quintessential was a much bigger deal, her mana senses improving tremendously as soon as she picked it. They were still confined to the small room, the ranking spire likely blocking her from sensing what was beyond, but she could see the mana around her much better than ever before. She could even see Perith's mana flow through his bones without even trying to. Perith had also benefited from the trial, as Sen had explained, his stats were quite a lot higher than they used to be as a basic stone ogre. It was a drop in the ocean compared to the total health he could get from his blessing when he occupied a huge body like the Alpha Ogre, but it was nice to have. This would prevent him from falling behind in the long run, especially with his mana which had doubled, jumping from 20 to 40,000. Actually, I changed my mind. What do I need discretion for? I throw big explosive lightning bolts. I'll just take the healing now. Sofia replaced Sniper with Radiance, which started at level 26. That was all for now, she would learn One with Suffering after freeing the slot thanks to the specialization. And only after I double check with Sen that it will work as I think. I don't want to waste a hard-earned skill slot. I fought a genuine god to get these. And last but not least, the specialization. Sofia had gotten all the time to think about what she wanted out of this. It was a long process of back and forth with herself, but she was relatively confident in her choice. Her second specialized skill would be Sanctity. It being a Saint-exclusive passive skill already made it desirable, but the real deciding factor was how it actually massively helped both offense and defense by allowing bigger bolts. The other choices were all fine too, and mana manipulation especially might have been a better choice in the long run, but ultimately she decided against going with it. It's just like the Emerald Cipher, nothing but a shortcut. Shortcuts are nice, but to specialize in them? I don't need that. I'm already going astonishingly fast by all metrics, it's time to acknowledge that. Skill understanding sufficient. Skill specialization point, classless, has been used. Skill already at maximum level. Please select a skill path, you may enter a cumulative 1 level debt to be offered new paths, previously unlocked paths may still be selected. The first available path appeared before Sofia's eyes. It was all in Draconic. No, please. Sofia had to lay down on the bed. This is going to take a while.